little bit different. It's about the political mood and whether you see any parallels between the 1970s when you were a young man from Northern Ireland trying to make a living in England at a time when there was profound public fear of Northern Irish terrorism in mainland Britain. Whether you see any parallels with what we've seen in the last decade, profound fear in Western countries of profound fear of jihadi Islamist terror, and laws passed, anti-terror laws passed, policing operations undertaken, which some in the Muslim community have claimed were discriminatory toward them. Do you see parallels?
Oh yeah, but the Irish, yeah. I've been saying it for years. I've been saying it for the last 10 years. The same thing is going to happen to the Muslim communities as what happened to the Irish. The only thing is, as I tell people when I'm speaking, don't do to the Muslim community what you did to the Irish. They allowed the Irish communities in England to be isolated. Don't do it to the Muslim community, because that only breeds terrorism.
Paddy Hill, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
It's been a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you for inviting me.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, we will try to have a great day. Weather-wise, it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag of mess. Hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. You're on CBC this morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube, wherever you're joining us. Thanks for being there. 5 degrees, warm, steady rain in Winnipeg. We're expecting 15 to 25 millimeters, so it's going to be a wet one. Our temperature actually will fall from 5. It's going to be around 3 degrees and steady for the day. And then, it's going to change. Tonight, we might even see a little bit of snow, even more rain all over the province today. The only places excluded really are far, far north in Churchill and far east side of the province. Otherwise, there's some kind of a warning everywhere, whether it's snow or rain, and we are going to get winter. We have snowfall warnings and winter storm warnings as well. So we'll dig through all of that, pardon the pun. But we're starting with wet in Winnipeg. Wow, it's going to be a long one. We're on the air till 8:37 this morning. Thank you for joining us, as I mentioned, wherever you're joining us. And let's say good morning to the team, and then we'll go to headlines. Kevin Ipatebo, hello. Kevin is our YouTube producer. Corey Funk, hello. Corey Funk is our show director, and we'll be on the air covering the commute. And good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who is super busy covering the weather and synthesizing it all. He'll be on air with us with that, and he's our technical producer. Heather Wells is here also. Heather always helps me sort through these weather issues, and she's here with headlines to sort through what's developing in news. Hi there.
Hi, good morning. Yes. Well, overcrowding in the Grace Emergency Department is being called dangerous and a catastrophe. Dr. Doug Alifson says when he was leaving his shift Sunday evening, 52 active patients were in an emergency room designed for 30. Another 40 patients, he says, were in the waiting room. Alifson, who is also running for the Federal Liberals in Winnipeg West, says the ER had no beds to admit patients. So we're going to hear more from him. As well, some people in Altona are outraged by comments made by their MLA following a fatal crash last Friday that claimed the lives of a woman and her 8-year-old daughter. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, this morning on the program, we're going to talk about a winter wonderland filled with toys, food, and a visit from Santa locally. We're going to hear how Variety Manitoba is helping kids experience a little holiday magic this season, and they've got a special event planned for today. So that and, of course, much more. Right now, the World Report.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlenger sitting in for Tom Power. Maggie Rogers is one of the most assured artists I've ever seen. She'll tell you what she's learned by trusting her instincts and why putting fun first on her latest album changed her approach to songwriting.
Q this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. As sentencing in a national security trial in Hong Kong is prompting international condemnation. 45 activists were ordered to serve prison time for their roles in a pro-democracy opposition movement. Many were sentenced to serve up to 10 years in what's being described as the region's biggest national security case to date. Freelance reporter Laura Westbrook has more.
A sea of umbrellas lined the perimeter of the court as hundreds gathered outside, a symbol of the pro-democracy movement. Inside, 3 judges handed down sentences ranging from more than 4 years to 10 years, the harshest going to former law professor Benny Tai, who was labelled the organiser of the 47 activists. Chan Po-ying, the wife of former lawmaker known as Long Hair Leung, said this after her husband was jailed for 6 years and 9 months.
The whole trial is unfair because what they have done is only, to do what the basic law have laid down. It is their right to put pressure to the administration to let them have respond to the majority of Hong Kong people.
Many have spent the past 3 years behind bars. The charges relate to an unofficial primary vote to pick candidates for an election. Prosecutors accuse the activists of plotting to paralyse the government and force then leader Carrie Lam to resign by seizing a majority in the Legislative Council and using it to block budgets. The city's security chief, Chris Tang, said the sentencing reflected the severity of the offence.
And we are looking in the judgment to see if there's any grounds that we do not agree and we consider that it warrants for a review.
For some, this sentencing is a knockout blow to dissent in the city. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
Today marks 1,000 days since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Thank you for ensuring that not a single one of the 1,000 days of this terrible war became a day of betrayal of our shared European values.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky speaks to a special session of the European Parliament marking the day. Since February 24, 2022, the war has expanded to multiple fronts. Millions of Ukrainians have been forced from their homes, and more than 12,000 people have been killed. As Crystal Gomansing reports, the conflict is reaching a pivotal point.
For me, it's not important.
1,000 days of war doesn't mean much to Maxim Kolesnikov, possibly because the discharged Ukrainian soldier has some disturbing numbers of his own. 10.5. The number of months he spent as a prisoner of war, 70. The number of pounds he lost as his body consumed itself as he fought to stay alive. Sitting in a cafe in Kyiv, he says people still have hope for peace, but that's not their reality.
It's just war of 3 years of war, almost 3 years.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared a special tribute video on his social media channels. It features music mixed with scenes of war. The war has now reached an uncertain turning point. Thousands of North Korean soldiers are in Russia. The U.S. has lifted restrictions on long-range weapons, giving Ukraine more firepower, with the UK expected to follow suit. And no one knows what Donald Trump will do when he returns to the Oval Office. An emergency meeting of the UN Security Council Monday night, Russia stuck with the line of a special military operation. 1,000 days ago, around the very same large semicircle table, members were told by the Russian representative his country had no plans for a war. Then their phones buzzed with news of the full-scale invasion. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
Leaders at the G20 in Brazil will be talking about climate change on the last day of their summit. So far, the discussion has been focused on poverty and global inequities. As Karina Roman reports from Brazil, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is among the leaders linking those challenges to the current global instability.
Complex global issues like the conflict in Ukraine and our standing so strongly against Russia's illegal invasion.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterated the need for like-minded nations to band together. U.S. President Joe Biden agreed, warning that the very goal of this year's summit to eradicate poverty and hunger is made more difficult by Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine led to the highest record food prices in all of history.
In fact, this week marks 1,000 days of the war in Ukraine, and the war was an agenda topper in many of Trudeau's one-on-one meetings, with Biden, with Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and with the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
I'm at the G20 with one message, which is that we must double down on our support for Ukraine.
This G20 is the first time Trudeau met with Mexico's new president. His sit-down with Claudia Sheinbaum focused on trade, unsurprisingly, and the impending renegotiation of the continent's free trade agreement.
We'll obviously talk about the new American president and some of the work we're going to do together around that.
And whether Canada and Mexico can stay united in negotiations with the Donald Trump administration. Karina Roman, CBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
Gisèle Pellicot says the mass rape trial against her husband is entering its final stages. Gisèle is expected to speak in a French court today, as is her husband Dominique. He has admitted to inviting dozens of strangers to their house to rape his wife after he drugged her. 50 other men are also accused. The 71-year-old insisted on a public trial in an attempt to expose Dominique and the other accused, and for change in France. Protests have been organized across the country in support of Gisèle. The trial is expected to last until December. Donald Trump is standing behind his pick for the next U.S. Attorney General. The president-elect has reportedly been working the phones to ensure the confirmation of Matt Gaetz. The former Republican representative from Florida has caused rifts within the party. Gaetz is accused of having sex with an underage girl in 2017. And now a lawyer representing that girl and her friend is speaking out. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what is the lawyer in this case saying?
Yeah, for the first time, we're now hearing what two witnesses told House lawmakers behind closed doors who were investigating those allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use by then Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who is now, of course, Trump's pick to be Attorney General. Now, lawyer Joel Leppard represents the two women who testified before the House Ethics Committee and said they told investigators Gaetz paid them for sex and illicit drugs while they were high school students. He says one of his clients described what she saw at a Florida house party back in 2017 when Gaetz was a member of Congress. Listen.
She was walking outside to the pool, and she observed to her right her friend, who was 17 at the time, having sex with Representative Gaetz. They were leaned up to what she described to as a game table of some type.
Now, Gaetz has long denied these allegations, and federal prosecutors looking into these claims 4 years ago didn't charge him. But now, with Gaetz's pick as Trump's Attorney General, this committee's investigation has taken on a whole new urgency, and there are growing calls by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to see this report.
What can we expect next?
Yeah, members of the Ethics Committee will meet tomorrow to not only discuss their investigation, but whether they should release it. Now, technically, Gaetz is no longer in office, so Congress doesn't have jurisdiction over him. But considering this high-profile appointment, calls to make this report public are growing louder, as I mentioned earlier, on both sides of the aisle.
All right, thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington.
The winner is Ann Michaels for Health.
Toronto poet novelist Ann Michaels walked away with this year's Giller Prize. The literary award is given out every year to a Canadian author by a jury of their peers. Michaels' fictional novel, Held, dives into the impacts of war on generations. In her acceptance speech at last night's gala, Michaels called for unity within the country's arts community.
Our literary history is one of phenomenal assertion. And now, as then, we need unity, not just within one community, but among all the arts, to forge practical alliances that proclaim our values.
And Michaels' win comes with a $100,000 prize. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning. morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We've got a mess of a weather day on our hands, starting with rain in Winnipeg. It's 4 degrees right now, and Abby's going to get into all these details of these watches and warnings that are going to bring us snow and rain and nasty conditions across most of the province. This hour on the program, the other side of the nastiness is the beautiful white stuff. I'm talking about when it looks like a winter wonderland, and we have an interview about that today. A winter wonderland filled with toys, food, and a visit from Santa. We're going to hear how Variety Manitoba is helping children experience a little holiday magic. There's 1,400 kids involved in a special event that's coming up, so stay tuned to hear more about it. Also, we have a new report out today that paints a troubling picture of child and family poverty across Canada, and we're going to hear more about that and why the authors are calling on all federal parties to address this now. A promise was made to end child poverty in this country by the year 2000. And yeah, it's 2024. So that promise was made back in 1989. We're going to look a little bit at the political history and then, of course, the numbers this morning about who is most in poverty. I can share this from the report already. The depths of poverty in this country overall are deeper. So it's not just that people are living in poverty. They're actually living in more poverty. Can you imagine at a time like right now when all of our other stories are about the high cost of living and such and everything? It's very troubling. So we're going to look at how Manitoba factors in as well. Heather Walls is here with news headlines first at 6:11 a.m. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in Manitoba are about to drop. The province is going to announce today an additional 800 such surgeries every year will take place in Selkirk, and they'll start early in the new year. The announcement will be part of today's speech from the throne, kicking off a short session of the Manitoba legislature. And a jury in Minnesota begins hearing evidence today in the trial of 2 men charged in connection with the death of the Patel family. That family of 4 from India was found frozen in Manitoba trying to cross the U.S. border back in 2022. We'll hear the latest from Fergus, Minnesota, where that trial is happening. Coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Hey, Heather.
Yes.
Did you bring your boots?
I did not, because in Winnipeg, fortunately for us, I shouldn't say fortunately.
Rubber boots.
People may be just waiting for the snow, but in Winnipeg, it's going to be mostly rain. So I think I'll get by with just my little shoes today.
You might. Maybe rubber boots, though.
Yeah, rubber boots are good.
Yeah. I think depending on the whole province, someone needs an extra accessory today.
Yeah.
Layers, rubber boots, winter boots, shovel, wipers, hats.
Umbrella.
Umbrella for sure. Yeah, wow. So let's start with the wet part, which is Winnipeg. We have a lot of watches and warnings to tell you about. Abby, how are you doing? Take a big breath.
Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 pages of everything that's going to be coming at us today.
All right. So walk us through the main points of what we're expecting
It's mostly going to be wet in some areas, and then we're going to see snow in some areas. But it will start wet, turning into snow later in the day, and then we'll see blowing snow in the northern parts of the region. Now, I'll just do a summary for you here. We have a snowfall warning in effect for the northern part of the province that would affect Thompson and surrounding areas. We're looking at about 15 to 25 centimeters of snow once this system gets through, and this will be starting with freezing drizzle this morning, changing to snow later, and then that would intensify as we get into the night with strong northerly winds gusting up to 60 kilometers. Now, that is for Thompson and surrounding area. That is the snowfall warning. Then we have the winter storm warning in effect for western Manitoba that includes Brandon and the surrounding areas. So if you're Nipawin, Calgary, and those surrounding areas, there's a storm moving your way from the south, which will bring significant snow, starting with rain. We're already seeing that rain, and then some areas will be seeing freezing rain before turning to snow. You'll be getting about 15 to 30 centimeters expected, with higher amounts in some other areas. Now, we live in the winter storm warning. Then we now talk about central and northern Manitoba, where we have the powerful influence and surrounding areas. areas. We have this storm warning, which will be affecting most of these areas, bringing heavy snow, about 15 to 25 centimeters expected. Now, along with strong northerly wind gusts up to 60 kilometers will be coming your way. This will create poor visibility. So I'd advise, this is a point I would say, once the system comes, travel is not advised. I would not advise you to travel. And then we now have the one that concerns us here in the city, where we have that special weather statement for Winnipeg, the Interlake, the Pembina Valley region, the Red River Valley. There's a powerful low pressure system moving in from the south.
That's the rain. That starts as the rain. Lots of rain.
We're already getting the sign of it this morning. That will be coming. It's going to be moving in from the south, bringing significant rainfall to the Red River Valley. We're going to see about 15 to 25 millimeters of rain as this colder air moves in. The rain will then be turning to snow as we get into, as that system comes and reaching Winnipeg. It's going to be getting to Winnipeg by the evening period, and then the snow will continue into Wednesday. We're going to see about 15 centimeters possible in the west and a few centimeters here in Winnipeg.
I'm just going to clarify of rain, millimeters. And then tomorrow 2 centimeters of snow.
Yes, 2 centimeters of snow.
Lots of numbers.
So these may vary depending on the storm's path. So you just have to be prepared accordingly. But just stay updated and try to watch out for your weather alerts on your phones. Right now it is, let's see now, 4 degrees in Winnipeg. We're seeing light rain outside. The statement is and then we'll get about, we're going to hold steady of 3 degrees today.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
So Abby's got the toughest job. Corey's covering the commute. Is it busy as well?
Right now, actually, no major issues out there that I'm hearing of. And in terms of the highways, I'm just keeping an eye on Manitoba 511 this morning. And here in southern Manitoba, at least, really just some visibility, poor visibility in some patches around Souris, around Dauphin, around Russell as well. But haven't seen any issues on the highways yet. But I imagine by tomorrow morning, that's going to look a lot different. So, but if you're out there on the highways, you see something and you want to let me know, and it's not great where you are, definitely give me a call and I'll let your fellow listeners know. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I alluded to off the top of the hour here, later today, local children, a whole bunch of them, are going to be invited to a special holiday event. Variety Manitoba's annual Winter Wonderland is going on at the RBC Convention Centre. So 1,400 kids are expected to gather for food and music, and they'll be greeted by a special visitor from the North Pole. Jeff Liba is Executive Director for Variety, Children's Charity of Manitoba, and with us via Zoom. Hi, Jeff. Oh, we've got some audio problems there. You might be muted. You know Zoom. We all do this in our meetings, right? You just got to find the right button and give it a shot. So 6:18 is the time right now. There you are. Yeah, we've got you. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Mercy. How are you?
I'm very well. Very, very well. How many kids are you expecting at the convention center today?
Yeah, over 1,400 kids. So this is each and every year we've put on this event. We've tried to make the event bigger and help more kids because a big part of it is we just recognize that a lot of us are fortunate and don't have to worry about a lot of things like presents under trees for our children, or if we are kids getting presents. And so that's not the story for a lot of kids in our city. So 1,400 kids, 9 schools from 4 different school divisions in the city are going to be joining us today at the convention center.
And what fun things do you have planned for the kids?
Oh, glitter tattoos, face paintings, singing along carols, as you mentioned before, a visit from the jolly old fellow from the North Pole, and the great thing is that what we do is put on a hot meal for these kids, try and really sort of glamour, glitz it up a little bit, so it's white linen tablecloths and served to them at their tables, trying to really create a special outing for these kids. And then at the end of their visit, they all walk out with a big gift bag that's got a toy and practical items like which they're going to need after today, toques and mitts and toothbrushes and toothpaste and treats. So we're just trying to show some love to kids in the community and do our part.
How much has the event grown since it started in 2017, and what prompted you to start doing this in the first place?
Well, I'll start with that. It really was a give back, right? We do a lot of great work in the community for kids that are living with special needs. And we just recognize again that it's becoming tougher and tougher on working class families. And so we wanted to do something to sort of ease a little bit of the burden and also provide kids with a special day. So we started off in 2017. We probably had about 300 to 400 kids. And at that point, and up until last year, we were in smaller venues where we were having to do multiple seatings and multiple days, and it was a lot more work. So to be able to partner with RBC Convention Center and great folks like those at Pratt's Wholesale and Food Services to help us out with the day just makes a huge difference.
How do you identify the kids? Does it happen through schools? You mentioned that it's school based.
Yeah, so it starts with some census data, right, to be able to identify areas in our community that have a higher proportion of kids that are from low-income families, and then we work with the schools because, obviously those 9 schools, their total population is greater than 1,400. So we set aside a certain number of seats for each school, and then we talk to the schools themselves and just make sure that they're the ones that decide who are the kids that need this special day the most. And each year we cycle through schools so that we're not doing the same schools over and over again. And the sad reality is, that every one of our communities in our city and our province have these pockets of folks that are struggling. And so it's sadly far too easy to find kids that could benefit from a day like today.
What kind of reaction do you get from kids who've participated in the past?
Oh my goodness, right? I mean, the kids are ecstatic. They walk into a room that's filled with beautiful decor, holiday themed decor. And for a lot of them, given that we're on November the 19th, it might be one of the first times before Christmas that they get that. And like I said, then they're just treated like amazingly, right? And so the kids are all smiles. They're all walking out of there. The minute they get their gift bag at the end, they're walking out of there thrilled. Because, sadly, again, a lot of these kids aren't getting very many gifts under the tree. And then I look at sort of how it makes all of our volunteers feel, right? Because this event couldn't happen without a ton of volunteers. And so our volunteers, I mean, their hearts are just warmed knowing that they're, again, making a huge difference for these kids and their families.
What does it cost for a child to attend the event? Because I know that you guys obviously have volunteer, you rely on donations. So what's the reality of what you've been able to achieve there?
Well, so we do have a number of options, I guess, for folks that want to help support us out. We do, as I mentioned, have some good community partners. Obviously, we're not charging kids or schools anything to attend. That's part of it, is that it's completely free for the kids that are attending. But we do have hard costs to offset. And, in any given year, the dollar value on that, depending on the donations, is $20,000 or $30,000 that we're short. And so every little difference helps. And we sort of do package that, in the sort of way of, you can help a child, you can help that child's classroom, you can help a school, you can help, all 9 schools that are attending, depending on how much money you're giving.
Well, I know this is at 11 o'clock today, so people should watch for little ones around the convention center. That's a lot of kids. Jeff, thanks for being up early and setting the table for us in terms of what's going to be happening there.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I hope everyone has a great day.
You too. That is Jeff Liba with us live, the Chief Executive Officer for Variety, the children's charity of Manitoba. So the Winter Wonderland event at the Convention Centre is on from 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock this afternoon.
It began with a lamb selling crinkle-proof ties. Then a stickman named Ready Kilowatt added a jolt. But marketing really got wild when a striped fella named Tony showed up at breakfast.
Good, they're great!
Put a tiger in your tank. Advertising gets animated on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
We were talking all about that event today at the Convention Centre. I just want to mention that coming up this hour, we're going to have a deeper look at what's going on with poverty and specifically as well child poverty in this country. There's a brand new report out that's actually out just today. So we're going to get those details at about 6:45. Right now, 6:24 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday morning, and it's going to just keep coming. So for sure, bring the umbrella and make your plans accordingly today. Bit of music this morning from Basha Bulat, who is preparing to release a new album this year, and it's called Basha's Palace, and its track list includes the next tune we're going to play on the show here. This is a tune called Baby.
Wrong way, home again. Some roads never end. Halfway home to my bed. Have you nothing left but in my head, in my sleep, where in my dreaming arms have you been? Can I be brave enough to believe in all this changing up my sleep? I'll tell you, baby, 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 I don't know. Baby, 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 I don't know. Not when I'm lost, not when I'm blue. What was I thinking if not of you? And I've been so confused. Now you complicate every path I make. Tell me what to do. Have I still got nothing left? Oh, baby, 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 I don't know. Baby, 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 I don't know. Wrong way out of here. Some roads never end. Halfway home to my bed. Halfway in my head, in my sleep. What was I thinking I would perceive? What was I thinking of to be free? What was I thinking if not of me? I don't know. And I'm gonna make it day and night and day. Run around and face it. Am I really changing? Am I gonna make it day and night and day? Run around and face it. What was I thinking, baby? Baby, baby, I know love. Oh, baby, 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 I know love. Am I gonna make it day and night and day? Turn around and face it. Oh, what was I thinking? Oh, baby, baby, I don't love.
Oh, I like that. We should mash that up at some point. That'd be fun with all the other baby songs, right? That is called Baby. It is Basha Bulat's version. It's from her upcoming album, Basha's Palace, which is due out in February.
There's more to community than location. It's about the spaces we share, physically and digitally, the points of view that divide or unite us. Gen Z, let's get to know each other. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to RRC Polytech's Notre Dame campus November 18th to 29th. live radio, live streaming, and your point of view. Let's talk. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
So that is Jim Agapito's voice. He's been doing these stories on Red River, and he's going to be in live after 8 o'clock because Jim got a sneak peek into a new state-of-the-art simulation lab that revolutionizes medical learning in this province. So he's going to join us after 8 to tell us all about it and what it's going to do for students who are entering the field. So that'll be cool. Today is also, I want to mention here, Women's Entrepreneurship Day in Canada. So we're going to get some data on the role that women could play in reviving the country's struggling economy. And then also we're hoping that you'll call us about women entrepreneurs in Manitoba. Tell us who you want to shout out today. What's their story? What's their business? Why do you admire them? Or maybe you're one of them. Call and tell us about your hard work. 788-3205, or you can always Facebook on my Marcy Marcusa page. I'll get that question up. Right now it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is a rainy 4 degrees in Winnipeg. Our temperature's not going to move a whole lot, sticking close to 3 degrees in Winnipeg today. Well, and so it begins. Most of the province is going to feel a wintry blast starting today. Between 15 and 30 centimeters of snow is expected in parts of western Manitoba, including Riding Mountain and the Dauphin area. In the Winnipeg area, it is a special weather statement. Parts of the Interlake, Pembina, and Red River valleys also under this statement. Rain today, changing to snow late this evening. While Winnipeg expects 2 to 4 centimeters, some areas are going to see up to 15 centimeters. And it is a snowfall warning for northern Manitoba. The Thompson area could see between 15 and 25 centimeters of snow. So this mild fall had to end at some point. Wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in Manitoba are about to drop. The province will announce today an additional 800 such annual surgeries will take place in Selkirk starting early in the new year. The announcement is going to be part of today's speech from the throne. Premier Wab Kinew says it's all part of a province-wide approach to help more Manitobans in need.
To be able to add capacity to serve Manitobans from all regions, and also to do that in the Interlake Eastern Health Region, I think is important because we want that healthcare to be close to home for as many people as possible, for everyone, and this is an important step towards that.
2 new surgeons recruited from outside the province and an anesthesiologist are going to play key roles. Anesthesiologists, there we go, will play key roles in performing the surgeries. Today's throne speech kicks off a new short session of the Manitoba Legislature. The legislature scheduled to sit until December 5th. Overcrowding in the Grace Emergency Department is being called dangerous and a catastrophe. Dr. Doug Ailofson says when he was leaving his shift Sunday evening, 52 active patients were in an emergency room designed for 30. Another 40 patients were in the waiting room. Ailofson, who is also running for the federal Liberals in Winnipeg West, says the ER had no beds to admit patients, so they had to wait in stretchers in the hallway.
We get a lot of elderly patients who, even if medically they could go home, they're so frail, there's no way we can discharge them. And we're trying to find beds. There are low acuity unit beds in the city, but they're chronically full, so patients can sometimes wait as much as a week.
Ailofson wants more investment in long-term beds and home care as well as social services. He says people they're dealing with mainly this weekend were seniors who had minor injuries but had nowhere else to go. A spokesperson for the health minister tells CBC the province has added more nursing staff at the Grace as well as more medicine and surgery beds. The MLA for Borderland is facing criticism from some constituents over a Facebook post. A woman and her 8-year-old daughter died last Friday after a semi crashed into their SUV near Altona. RCMP have only said the semi driver is a 25-year-old man from Brampton, Ontario. But MLA Josh Gunter posted the semi driver should be deported if he is not a Canadian citizen. He also referred to, quote, cheap foreign labor in the trucking industry. Some Facebook commenters supported his remarks, but others, like Lori Dewick, say the comments are anti-immigrant. Gunter said later he did not mean to target particular people, but rather to call attention to road safety. Dewick says she doesn't buy it.
If his intent really was to focus on road safety, then his responsibility as a legislator is to think about how he could work on building those laws that protect everybody. And in this case, that includes the truck driver.
RCMP says charges against the semi-driver are anticipated. A jury in Minnesota begins hearing evidence today in the trial of 2 men charged in connection with the death of the Patel family. The family of 4 from India was found frozen in Manitoba while trying to walk across the U.S. border in 2022. Harsh Kumar Patel, no relation to the victims, and Steve Shand have pleaded not guilty to several counts related to human smuggling. Shand was arrested near the border in the van he was driving. Patel is accused of coordinating the smuggling and hiring Shand. Lawyers made opening statements yesterday afternoon after 12 jurors were selected in the community of Fergus Falls. A first-of-its-kind report card out this morning looks at the state of mental health care in this country. The report finds 2.5 million Canadians with mental illness are not getting the care they need. Anne Michaels is the winner of this year's Giller Prize for English Canadian Fiction. Her novel, Held, is a multi-generational examination of war and trauma. In her acceptance speech last night, which aired right here on CBC Radio, Michaels appealed for unity among all the arts.
I'm standing here tonight in solidarity with Canadian publishers and booksellers. A short time ago, less than 70 years, we lived in a country where only 14 books of Canadian fiction were published in a year, fewer in the entire country than the long list for this prize.
And outside the Park Hyatt Hotel in Toronto, some protesters demanded the Giller Foundation cut ties with several corporate sponsors, including Scotiabank, because of its investment in an Israeli arms dealer. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7, and you can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells is live in our news center. She's with us throughout the morning, and she started the news by talking about the weather because it very much is newsworthy today. Let's now turn our attention to some of those details. So we have a winter storm warning. We have a winter storm warning for 2 areas. We also have a snowfall warning, and we have a special weather statement. Abby is going to walk us through all of this. We also know that Winnipeg is mostly going to be wet before we turn white with snow. So, Abby, where do you want to begin with this?
I'll just say most of the province under that winter storm warning and special statements you mentioned. We're going to see heavy snow, strong winds, and crazy travel conditions expected through into Wednesday. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at 4 degrees. We're seeing light rain outside, and we are under that weather statement, which is in effect. We should expect a steady rain throughout the day, and we will see about 15 to 25 millimeters. Temperatures will be holding steady around 3 degrees. Brandon sitting at -1. Misty conditions we are seeing for that region. Expect rain this morning, turn into wet snow as you get to the afternoon. You will see about 2 centimeters of snow. Thompson is sitting at 0. Light freezing drizzle being spotted in that part of the province, and snowfall warning in effect for the surrounding area. That should be blowing later as you get into the day. We're looking at about 4 centimeters of snow for folks in Thompson. Churchill sitting at -2. It is cloudy out there. Today's forecast calls for cloudy conditions and a chance of light snow with a risk of freezing drizzle also in the forecast. Temperatures will be around 0 for the high in Churchill. Dauphin is at 1. Light rain you're seeing also under that winter storm warning. Expect rain to turn to snow today, bringing about 10 centimeters of snow by the evening. Gimli at 5 degrees and cloudy. The forecast for the Interlake region calls for rain. You'll get about 15 to 25 millimeters once the system comes through. And then tonight, this rain is going to be changing to snow with temperatures dropping to around 0. Steinbach at 4 and cloudy. We should see rain throughout the day, about 15 to 25 millimeters also in the forecast, and then that will turn to snow as you get into tonight. Murray's at 5 also. We're looking at rain, wet snow coming later, about 15 to 25 millimeters of rain and 2 centimeters of snow in the forecast. So it's going to be rain changing to snow in a lot of the regions today, and also we have that winter storm warning in effect for Brandon and surrounding area. areas, and we should see snow accumulating as this system comes by.
And then we'll all get used to what winter means when we're driving, and except our friends in northern Manitoba who've had the white stuff on the ground for a long time. But here in the south, yeah. All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
It's like being reacquainted with a friend that you kind of like every year.
But it's kind of mean every once in a while too. You're like, ah.
And then it's awesome too, like snowmobiling if you love that, or the
exactly.
cross country skiing, going around the
That
fire
kind of friend
pit,
you're
but-
happy to see just a few times a year. That's good.
Let's talk about how this is potentially impacting or already impacting traffic.
Yeah, well, let's start off with our friends in the north. It's really the highways today that are going to be an issue. And the north right now is really the only part that's showing that's being impacted. Those highways east and west of Thompson heading either to Gillam or Lynn Lake still being reported as covered with poor visibility. So just be careful if you're hitting the highways this morning, heading outside Thompson today. Down south, no issues yet, besides maybe some poor visibility around Dauphin, McCreary, as well as around Souris areas on the highways. But I haven't seen any issues about snow impacting the commute. But if you're out there, you're walking your bike and you're driving, give me a call. Let me know what you're seeing if the weather so far is impacting your commute. Would love to hear from you as kind of that system works its way in throughout the morning. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
It is 20 to 7 right now on 89.3 FM on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us. It's time for our business report with Crystalie Ramlakan, who's here via Zoom. Hello to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So we're starting talking about the fact that today is Women's Entrepreneurship Day in this country. And I understand you have data on the role that women could play in reviving the country's struggling economy.
Yeah, so the federal government says studies show that by advancing gender equality and women's participation in the economy, Canada could add up to $150 billion in GDP. But that remains a challenge in part because, just under 20% of Canadian small and medium-sized businesses are owned by women. So Beverly Rasmussen is a small business expert and has worked with hundreds of other women who face the obstacles of opening a thriving business. Rasmussen is the founder of Systems Business Coach, and here's her advice for entrepreneurs, both women and men.
And if you're going to start a business, do a business plan, understand your numbers, make sure that you have a model that works. It's really easy to get caught up in, the bright, shiny object, ooh, I'm going to start a business. So really understand what you're getting into in advance, because once you get into it, it's a little too late. It doesn't take 5 years to make a profit. If you're not making a profit in 8 months, so start at the beginning, intend to make a profit. If you are in business already, take a pause and same thing. Make sure that you know your numbers.
And she says half of small businesses in Canada fail by year 5. So it's important for all entrepreneurs to do the research.
There's a lot of really good supportive organizations as well in Manitoba. I just want to mention for women business owners, we just did an interview on some of them. One was just passing an anniversary recently. So we were interviewing entrepreneurs here. I'd love it if people would shout out women business owners. Tell us about their businesses, tell us about their work. If it's you, call and tell us about yourself and how hard it's been for you and your successes. 788-3205. That's the listener line. So Corey will pick it up or we'll get messages. Love that. Let's talk about the media business and move there. Where are we seeing cuts yet again, Crystalie?
Yeah, well, the Associated Press is cutting 8% of its staff. And this is just 2 weeks after Election Day in the U.S., where the Newswire service played a key role in calling races. So the news organization says it's trying to adapt to the fast-changing conditions in the media industry. And the AP News Guild says that the cuts are the result of revenue declines. So the Associated Press licenses its content to member organizations, but it's come under financial pressure over the last year. The largest newspaper company in the United States and the publisher of USA Today announced in March that it would stop using reports from AP, and other newspapers followed after that. Now, AP has started a nonprofit to try to raise money. It was also one of the first news organizations to strike a deal with OpenAI to license its news content to the artificial intelligence giant. And managers say that the cuts will be done through buyouts to try to avoid layoffs. As many as 121 employees are eligible for buyout packages. And these cuts are going to affect both news and business employees.
Let's have a brief look at the markets, Crystalie.
In Europe, markets are sliding. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is down. In Asia, markets are on the rise. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is down 41 cents to 68.75 US per barrel. Gold is up at $22.30 to $2,636.90 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.02 of a cent to 71.3 cents US.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
With our business news, that's Crystalie Ramlakan. Well, you might recall that earlier this year, Food Banks Canada came out with a report. It said that 1 in 4 Manitobans were struggling to put food on the table. But it also said that when you looked at some of the numbers, 42% of the people who use food banks in Manitoba, in our province, are children. We have had a long-standing issue with child poverty and child hunger in this province, and today there's yet another report out. So just to set the table here, pardon that pun, but to set the table, it's been 35 years since the House of Commons passed a motion unanimously to eliminate child poverty by the year 2000. Here we are 3.5 decades later since that promise was made, and it is an ongoing issue across the country. There's another new national report card that was released today. It highlights a concerning trend about the rates of child poverty in 2024. It calls on all federal parties to take action now. The report is released by Campaign 2000, End Child and Family Poverty, and Terrence Hamilton is here to talk about. He is the UNICEF Canada, with UNICEF Canada, and he's also a member of the Campaign 2000 Steering Committee. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what does this report card find about child and family poverty in this country?
So as you mentioned off the top, the news this morning is not particularly good. We have 3 main takeaways for you from our report card. The first is that we have seen the largest annual increase in child poverty rates now 2 years in a row. That follows quite a few years where we actually saw falling rates of child poverty. So we're seeing sort of a reverse in the trend over the past decade, and that's particularly concerning for us working towards the goal of ending child poverty. Rates of child poverty shot up by 5 percentage points over the last year. That's nearly 360,000 more children who fell into poverty, and there are now nearly 1.4 million children living in poverty in this country. The national rate increased, but also the rate in every province and territory. In Manitoba, we saw the rate increase by just over 3%, from about 24% to just over 27%. So in your intro, you mentioned 1 in 4. That's unfortunately about right for the number of children living in poverty in the province. And we also found that children are living in deeper poverty, which means that their families' incomes are falling further away from the low-income measure threshold. And on average, a low-income family is now more than about $14,000 in annual income below the poverty line. So they're living in deeper poverty, many of them now, than when the federal poverty reduction strategy was implemented.
I just want to interject because there's a lot for us to get into there. One of the things you said was that we were doing better and now we've slid back. Can you understand why?
Yeah, so some of the tools that were introduced over the last decade, particularly the Canada Child Benefit, we've seen a decrease in the efficacy of those tools. It's something that we foresaw coming, and we warned government that they were going to see this decline in the number of children that the Canada Child Benefit lifts out of poverty year after year. And so that's why one of the main recommendations of our report is to bolster that benefit. We know that it does affect the level of poverty, but it needs to be properly supported if it's going to have the impact that government wants it to.
And what are the other policy solutions that you're calling on all federal political parties to undertake?
So we have a wide range of solutions. There's actually 58 in the report that cover a wide range of social and economic policy. What we've been really trying to push the understanding of poverty at the government level. The experience of poverty is about more than just income, and so ensuring that access to services, including education and healthcare, are considered a poverty alleviation measure. The support that's given to community organizations, many of which constitute the membership of Campaign 2000, is critical to supporting poverty. But of course, at the end of the day, the income that is going to households needs to be sufficient for them to achieve a standard of living for their children that we would consider quote unquote normal in Canadian society. That includes the ability for their children to participate in sporting activities, to have a birthday party, have a birthday cake. These are things that we believe that in our society all children should have, and too many of them have households that are struggling to meet that standard.
We're talking about children, but tell me who else features in when you look at who's most often living in poverty in this country?
Yeah, so this is a very important question because, as I mentioned, poverty is experienced differently in different parts of the country. We know, of course, that First Nations on reserve continue to see much higher rates of poverty. The child poverty rate on reserve remains close to 40%, so 37% this year. And in Nunavut, who also released a territory-specific report card this morning, we see poverty rates for children under 6 at 50%, so 1 out of every 2 children. The children who are growing up in lone parent families also struggle. Most of those families are led by women, and they continue to have very high poverty rates. Again, nearly 1 in 2 are growing up in poverty, and they also tend to live in deeper poverty. They're more likely to receive social assistance, and they have a higher annual entry rate into poverty. So lone parent families are really losing out in this report card.
So where do we go? I mean, we started by saying that the motion in 1989 to eradicate child poverty is very much not being realized.
Mm-hmm. So every year when we release our report card, we have a conversation about whether or not we should change our name. Campaign 2000 was named for that 1989 commitment to end child poverty by the year 2000, and obviously we are far behind that goal. We keep that name as a reminder that this was a commitment that was made in 1989, and it was never rescinded. The House of Commons, that was an all-party motion to commit to ending child poverty, and they never went back on that promise. They never stood up and said, you know what, actually, never mind, we're not going to end child poverty in this country. And so we consider that a promise that the Parliament of Canada has made to children growing up in this country, and we consider it to be a standing promise. And so that's why we're pushing the politicians to do more. The reason why they have never rescinded that promise, in my opinion, is because they know that the Canadians that they represent don't want to live in a country where children are growing up in poverty. And so we have the commitment at a societal level, and we have some of the tools that we know work, but we just need to roll up our sleeves and double down on it.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.
Terrence Hamilton, Deputy Director of Policy with UNICEF Canada. It is 8 minutes to 7 a.m. on 89.3. It's wet and rainy out there in Winnipeg, and a high of 3 degrees. So we're actually above that right now. Our temperature is going to be steady around 3. We'll drop a few. And then tonight we turn to a bit of snow in Winnipeg, about 2 centimeters. But the whole province is a big mess of snow and rain. Only the far east of the province and Churchill are excluded from what we're expecting. And we're talking 15 to 25 centimeters of snow could be expected up in Thompson, and between 15 to 30 expected in parts of Westman. So it will be messy. Well, next in the show, let's turn our attention to discussion about federal government and federal politics. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is at the G20 meeting in Brazil. In Ottawa, meantime, Parliament remains in gridlock, and the legislative work of MPs has stalled. So let's talk about those two things with Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't we recap what Trudeau's been doing at G20 this week first?
You know, on some level, it's a very typical G20. They're down in Brazil. He's met with the president of Brazil. He's met with the president of Mexico, the prime minister of Japan, a few other world leaders, and, of course, U.S. President Joe Biden. I'd say this is normally a typical G20, and it is in some respects, but on others, a lot of the conversations are happening behind the scenes, away from the official tables, where they're talking about the incoming Trump presidency. And we've heard from Canadian officials that many people around the world are looking to Canada for advice on how to handle a Trump presidency because, of course, we've been here before. Just by nature of being neighbors, Canada deals with America a lot. So people are looking to us for tips on how to deal with what promises to be a much different presidency than what we've seen under Joe Biden.
I'm going to ask you about Joe Biden and his meeting yesterday as well in a moment, but I actually want to ask you what I introduced you with first. Why is Parliament in gridlock?
So Parliament's in gridlock because of a privilege debate. If you'll allow me to get into the parliamentary democracy weeds here, basically a privilege debate means that an MP feels their rights as a member of Parliament are being violated in some way. We've seen these debates a few times now in this Parliament, and essentially, in this case, it is an issue over documents. So there was a green tech funding agency called Sustainable Development Technology Canada that was in the news a little bit this spring, concerns about conflicts of interest there and the way they were spending money. So that issue sort of hit ahead this spring. The government dissolved the agency, but the opposition parties want to see documents about it. They want to understand it. And the Conservatives in particular want the documents handed over to the RCMP. The government handed documents over in the spring, but not all of the documents. They're withholding some. The Speaker ruled that that is a violation of privilege. And privilege debates supersede anything else going on in the House of Commons. So as long as this debate isn't settled, this debate will continue. And the Conservatives are saying that they want the documents handed over completely. They don't buy the Liberals' argument that some of these documents can't be handed over. So they want them handed over before they're willing to end this debate. The Liberals want this studied at a parliamentary committee.
Yep.
So they're not backing down, and that means everything is stalled.
And just last here this morning, I do want to ask you about, as I mentioned, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and U.S. President Joe Biden meeting. The U.S. President has authorized Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles now that could reach inside Russia. We'll hear more analysis on World Report momentarily. But what more do we know about their meeting?
Their meeting was about this, but it was also about all the other U.S.-Canada issues that are there. On this issue, on this Ukraine weapons issue, this is something where Canada and the U.S. are pretty aligned right now. The Prime Minister has actually been calling since about September for all of these geographic restrictions to be removed from weapons. He's called on the U.S. to do that, as well as France and Britain. So at this point, very much aligned. But again, you come to the idea of the Trump presidency. President Trump has a much different view of the war in Ukraine. Has talked about ending it before he takes office, pushing for peace, potentially pushing for Ukraine to give up land. And so, we're stepping up to a place where we will again be in sort of conflict with the U.S. policy.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I know we were a little bit briefer than usual, covering a lot of topics. We really appreciate your time.
Take care.
That is Ryan Tumulty. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star. And as I mentioned, more analysis of these stories and also the latest on the Canada Post strike coming up on World Report in 3 minutes' time. 3 minutes to 7 a.m. right now, and it is a rainy Tuesday morning. Let's go to Heather Wells for our headlines.
Good morning. Well, overcrowding in the Grace Emergency Department is being called dangerous and a catastrophe. Dr. Doug Ailofson says when he was leaving his shift Sunday evening, 52 active patients were in an emergency room designed for 30, another 40 patients in the waiting room. Ailofson, who is also running for the federal Liberals in Winnipeg West, says the ER had no beds to admit patients, so they had stretchers in the hallway. We're going to hear more from him about the situation in the Grace ER. Some people in Altona are upset by comments made by their MLA following a fatal crash. A woman and her 8-year-old daughter died after a semi-trailer collided with their SUV on the highway west of the town last Friday. We'll hear what the Borderland MLA had to say on social media about that coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
I also want to mention today is the speech from the throne in this province. So Manitoba's Lieutenant Governor will deliver the speech at 1:35, and we'll have analysis of that through the day, of course. In weather, wow. Light rain falling, 4 degrees in Winnipeg. We're expecting up to 25 millimeters. It's going to be wet. Our temperature will fall to 3. Tonight, this changes to snow, and we get a couple centimeters for Winnipeg. But most of the province today, under winter warnings and special weather statements, Westman and northern Manitoba could see 15 to 25 centimeters of snow. So it's going to be a big mess out there. The highways may be affected, especially north. Call us if you see any current issues. 788-3093 is where you can reach us on the commuter line. In the next hour on CBC, we're going to build on the story Heather's been mentioning in the news. Almost 3 years ago, a family of 4 from India, including 2 young children, were found frozen to death meters from the U.S. border. Now, the trial of 2 men accused of human smuggling has begun in Minnesota in a federal courtroom. We have a CBC Manitoba reporter there, Caitlin Gowerlich. She's been following this story, and so we'll hear what happened on day 1 of the trial when we connect with her via Zoom live in the next hour. In addition, we're more than halfway through Movember, and we'll find out how the annual men's health awareness effort is going this year and how it's moved from the physical to mental health in many ways for men. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
Texting during class, interrupting classmates, getting there late. A new study says rudeness among students is on the rise and teachers are struggling to deal with it. How to bring back civility in schools and beyond, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. 2.5 million Canadians with mental illness are not getting the care they need. That is a one-of-a-kind finding and a first report this morning. It looks into the state of mental health care in this country. And as Mike Crawley reports, it finds that when it comes to mental health, Canada's universal health system is not so universal.
I went into the psychiatric emergency.
When Leanne Minicillo hit a low point in struggling with her mental health, she sought help at a hospital ER where a doctor prescribed medication.
So I looked at her and I said, is there somewhere that I could go? Like somewhere that I could see someone on a consistent basis and talk to them? And she said, nope, I don't know. It was like, you're on your own kind of thing.
Minicillo's challenges in finding care outside hospital are reflected in a new report card from the Canadian Mental Health Association. It finds that roughly 1 person in 12 has mental health care needs that are not being met.
It really tells a story about the lack of access.
Lena Lowe is the CMHA's senior policy analyst and the report's lead author.
Mental health is really not part of our universal system of care.
The report says the provinces spend a little more than 6% of their healthcare budgets on mental health, addictions, and substance use. That's roughly half what's spent in such countries as France and Germany. Dr. Kwame Mackenzie is a psychiatrist and CEO of the Wellesley Institute think tank.
We're spending a smaller percentage on mental health than we used to 10 years ago. We've gone backwards.
The CMHA report argues that Ottawa needs not only to increase mental health funding, but attach strings, forcing provinces to provide more mental health services through the public system. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
European foreign ministers are meeting in Warsaw to discuss the war in Ukraine. Today marks 1,000 days since Russian forces invaded the country in February 2022. Their meeting comes at a pivotal time in the conflict. Freelance reporter Abby Kodassin has more.
Polish Prime Minister Andrzej Duda welcomes European officials in Warsaw. His government calls this gathering the most important negotiations linked to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as the wider war approaches its 3rd year. The U.S. has said it will provide a fresh defense package for Ukraine in the final weeks of Joe Biden's presidency. This comes after Washington lifted limits on Kyiv and greenlit the use of American-made long-range weapons, ATACMS, into Russian territory. Duda praised the step and said it highlighted it was
business as usual
with Moscow. Now all eyes are on Germany, France, and the United Kingdom on whether they'll follow the U.S.'s lead. General Richard Sheriff, the former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, sees it this way.
I'd say go for it. Absolutely go for it.
French President Emmanuel Macron did say he found Biden's decision to be a good one. While Germany this week confirmed it will send 4,000 intelligence-guided drones to Kyiv, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has long said he would not approve the transfer of Berlin's long-range missiles, saying that would be an escalation. The German public mostly agrees with him, but Sheriff says the West must recognize
that Russia is not going to change its intent to remove Ukraine from the map as a sovereign state. We're going to have to fight a second Cold War to prevent a third world war.
But if Washington is no longer as willing to fund Ukraine once Donald Trump enters the White House in January, Europe may be fighting that Cold War without its strongest ally. Abby Cuevas in CBC News, Berlin.
The war in Ukraine has also been a topic for discussion among leaders attending the G20 summit in Brazil. The group of industrial nations has called for an end to the conflict. During his news conference today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau acknowledged upcoming changes in Washington make the situation a bit unpredictable.
We're very aware of potential challenges with President Trump coming in, but we're not going to panic. We're going to continue to stay focused on getting the support to Ukraine that Ukraine needs to win this war and establish peace.
During the campaign, President-elect Donald Trump claimed he could end the war in one day. The U.S. is by far the biggest supplier of military aid in Kiev's war effort. There is widespread concern about what will happen if that changes. COP29 climate talks are heading into their final stretch in Baku, Azerbaijan. World leaders are trying to come up with a financial plan to tackle climate change where they can all agree. The CBC's international climate correspondent Susan Ormiston is following the story in Azerbaijan. And Susan, the G20 in Brazil sent some signals to COP29 in their communique last night. How is that being received?
Well, if you listen to the UN's climate chief, Simon Steele, the G20 leaders were sending a strong message here to Baku, telling negotiators not to leave without a finance deal. So that may give these talks a boost of energy, and they need that. But others here noted that the G20 leaders made no mention at all of fossil fuels. And last year in Dubai, the crowning achievement was an agreement to transition away from fossil fuels. But that kind of language has disappeared from this year's climate conference. Here's Luca Baramici from EcoClimate, an Italian think tank, speaking to reporters this morning in Baku.
What we are less happy about and worry about is that there isn't a very clear signal on the direction of the energy transition. There is a lack of recognition that transitioning away from fossil fuels is part of the solution. And this is worrying.
Where are the negotiations when it comes to a financial package from this COP?
Well, the political ministers who wield all the power to make decisions have to soon say what each country is prepared to support, how much they'd pay, and what kind of finance, as in loans or grants. So far, there are no hard numbers on the table, and it's getting late. Here's Bergamici again.
The talks are very slow. The reason it's slow is that no country has made a real offer on the table on the quantum, which is public finance, and on how to mobilize and how much to mobilize. We need to get serious about it.
So yes, they have until Friday now to get serious and try to come up with this climate deal.
All right. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
The CBC's international climate correspondent, Susan Ormiston, in Azerbaijan.
No government, no law has the right to debate Ranga Tira Tanga.
Politician Rawiri Waiti speaks to the tens of thousands of New Zealanders rallying in front of their parliament today. The member of the Maori Party is supporting demonstrators opposed to a bill that would alter Indigenous rights. The Treaty Principles Bill reinterprets a 184-year-old treaty signed between the British and Indigenous Maori. The party that introduced it argues that the treaty's core values have led to racial divisions. Critics say the bill would dilute Maori rights. New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says his national party will not be supporting the bill and therefore it will not become law. CBC News is learning more about a man accused of human smuggling. He is now charged with running an international network. Police are linking him to a tragedy last March. 9 people died trying to enter the U.S. illegally. As the CBC's Jorge Barrera reports, the case is raising questions about the integrity of Canada's passport system.
A man from Sri Lanka weeps in this interrogation video after he was caught getting smuggled from northern New York State into Cornwall, Ontario in April 2021. Detective Sergeant Matthew Amer with a multi-agency border task force sat across the table.
My role here is to investigate the criminality involving people smuggling him across the border as a victim.
The man was sent back to the U.S. Human smugglers in Canada have increasingly cashed in on migrants looking for greener pastures on both sides of the border, leading to a spike in illegal crossings. A Canadian citizen named Thesson Garrison Risaya was charged with organizing the smuggling run in 2021. He was ordered to surrender his passport and was monitored by an ankle bracelet while awaiting trial. Amer, now retired, says Rosaya didn't stop and allegedly coordinated dozens more human smuggling runs.
He was still operating.
Including in March 2023, when 2 families from India and Romania drowned with their boatmen in the St. Lawrence River. After the deaths, police raided Rosaya's Montreal home.
He had obtained a new passport.
Probably one of the worst failures I've seen in 9 years now.
MP Tom Kimmich, the conservative immigration critic, says he wants to probe how Rosaya got the new passport while under court-imposed conditions, barring him from having one.
How bad is our national security infrastructure when we can't catch the most basic things in our system?
Rosaya, convicted for the April 2021 incident, remains in custody on new human smuggling charges. Immigration Canada says privacy laws prevent it from commenting on Rosaya's case. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good wet Tuesday morning, Manitoba. I should say good snowy Tuesday morning if you're in northern Manitoba or west, man. We've got a mess of a day coming our way. Hi, everybody. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Right now in Winnipeg, it's light rain falling and it's 4 degrees, but steady rain that's going to be with us for the day. Coming up on this hour of Information Radio, Manitoba is known for being friendly, but when it comes to making newcomers feel welcomed, one organization says we still have a way to go. There is a new report out that looks at attitudes towards newcomers. We're going to hear more about it and crunch some of the data. In addition, it is more than halfway through November. We're going to find out how the annual men's health awareness effort is going this year. And it's also moved from physical health to mental health awareness for men as well. It's somewhat of a shift, so stay tuned. We'll hear more about it. And I want to mention that we also are going to touch base with Caitlin Gowerluck, who's our reporter. She's in Minnesota right now. She is covering the story of what happened almost 3 years ago. That family from India, including 2 young kids who were found frozen to death meters from the border. As you may have been hearing in the news, the trial now of 2 men accused of human smuggling has now started in a federal courtroom in Minnesota. So we'll find out about what happened on day 1 from Caitlin. Right now, let's go to other news with Heather Wells. Hi there.
Good morning. Well, wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in this province are about to drop. The NDP government is going to announce an additional 800 such surgeries every year are going to take place in Selkirk starting early in the new year. The announcement is going to be part of today's speech from the throne, which will kick off a short session of the Manitoba legislature. The Brandon Police Service needs to hire more police. The force says of its 110 positions, only 91 officers are in place. Brandon Police is offering signing bonuses and a new training program trying to get more boots on the ground. We'll hear about that as well in our next local news at 7:30.
It's an interesting one too, right? Because they've got a new chief out in Brandon
They
as
do,
well.
yes.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells will be back with us throughout the whole morning. News anytime, of course, online, in between when you hear her on the air here. Abby, take a breath. What's the weather like?
Across board, we are looking at winter storm and snowfall warning in effect. Heavy snow, strong winds, hazardous travel conditions expected into Wednesday. That winter storm warning is in effect for much of western and central Manitoba, including the Brandon area. Heavy snow is expected. We're going to be seeing about 15 to 30 centimeters possible. Strong winds will be gusting up to 70 kilometers. This will be causing poor visibility and blowing snow, so you might want to take that into consideration. The snow will start as a rain and then freezing rain in some regions, but will change to snow as the storm moves through. And if we look farther north, we're going to see a snowfall warning in effect for Thompson, Nelson Lake, and all the way to Split, Nissel House and Split Lake. We're looking at about 15 to 25 centimeters of snow expected, along with freezing drizzle turning to snow this morning as the wind wind picks up, gusting all the way to 60 kilometers. Right now, Winnipeg, 4 degrees. Light rain we're seeing outside. Keep that umbrella handy. Tonight, the rain will switch to snow late in the evening, and we should be seeing about 2 centimeters expected
of snow.
And then temperatures are just going to hold steady around 3 degrees.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, The Drive.
Yeah, let's start here in the city. Cavalier and Portage, the lights are flashing red in all directions. There was a multi-vehicle collision that knocked down a traffic standard. So you want to treat that as a 4-way stop for now. I'll be keeping an eye on that this morning. As for those hazardous conditions that Abby was talking about, they haven't started quite yet, but it's probably in a few hours' time they might be different out on the highways. I'm starting to see kind of poor visibility starting to form, though, throughout western Manitoba on the highways, according to Manitoba 511 around Dauphin, McCreary, all the way down to Souris, Glenborough, Boissevain area. So that's what's the biggest issue right now on the highways. But as that storm comes in, by tomorrow morning, I imagine you're going to definitely want some winter tires or avoid travel altogether. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. If you see anything, though, going on out there and you want to let me know about it, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Well, today is Women's Entrepreneurship Day in this country. And I love that because we've asked you to call us and tell us about women entrepreneurs in Manitoba.
Hey, good morning. My name is John Schellenberg. I want to nominate Lisa Spring. Lisa has been struggling since 2019 when she became bedridden, contacting a virus unknown at the time. And she has developed an Airbnb called Painted Turtle Lake Resort. She has developed that from her bed. 2 years in a row, named as Manitoba's #1 Airbnb. She's an incredible administrator. And she's developing an online coaching course program all on her own. When people ask her, what is your job? She puts that stuff aside and she says, my job every day when I get up is I go to work and my work is to hope. Her name is Lisa Spring. She's a fantastic entrepreneur.
I love this. And I'm secretly hoping that as we get all your calls and people talk to us and share us about the women entrepreneurs in this province, like Lisa, that maybe later today we'll feature some of them. Maybe we'll have them on some of our other CBC shows. So keep those calls coming. And you know what? If you are a woman entrepreneur and you're thinking, well, should I call? Call about yourself too. What are you doing? What keeps you working hard? What motivates you? Tell us about your business. We're getting things on Facebook as well, comments rather. And so we're simply asking on this Women's Entrepreneurship Day, shout out your Manitoba entrepreneur, 788-3205. That's the number to call, 788-3205. You can write to us on Facebook as well. That's my Marcy Marcusa page. I'll share one quick comment here. Silky Azilki McCowan wrote in, Wild and Rooted. We are 3 women who own Wild and Rooted. We created a floral and lifestyle business with the mindset of sustainability and foraging and harvesting what Mother Nature provides. We create beauty and offer workshops to others that want to create an experience of the beauty that grows all around us. So check us out. So thanks very much for Cynthia for writing in. We'll get more of these comments and calls on, but you got to share those stories. 788-3205. Well, let's return to more serious news today. Results of a new poll reveal that a growing number of Canadians think that newcomers get too many benefits. That was just one of the questions posed in a new survey that was released yesterday by the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. And we wanted to know, though, how people feel about human rights. They wanted to know how people really feel about human rights. So they prompted their survey. They asked 2,500 Canadians for their perspectives. It revealed, this is just one of the findings, that 56% of those polled believe that refugees and asylum seekers receive, as I alluded to, too many benefits. Now, that is up from 46% in last year's survey. And only 44% of those surveyed think newcomers make our country a better place. So we are looking at this one result from the survey this morning because we want to sort of test it against some of the real numbers that we have in this country when it comes to supports for newcomers and refugees, and also dig into what's concerning about some of these attitudes changing as well. So Emily Halderson is with us. She's with the Manitoba Association of Newcomers Serving Organizations, and she's here via Zoom. Hi there.
Hi, Marcy. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So as someone who works in this field, like obviously you have a reaction to the statistics. Can you tell me what came to your mind when you were reading about this?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I looked at the report and I think it does talk about refugees and refugee claimants, or it calls it refugee applicants and refugee claimants. So we can't assume that we're talking just about refugee claimants or asylum seekers who come across the border or come here in other ways to claim asylum here. It could also be, including people who are come through government programs, who have come through government assisted programs or private sponsorship or other types of refugee streams. So that's one thing I just want to mention, because I think that's important. A lot of the negative things in media and even politicians and stuff lately has been mostly about those folks who are claiming asylum here. So just wanted to mention that first off. So it just seemed like a general feeling about newcomers, right, as a whole, and that people are not kind of supporting as much immigration these days. And I think one of the biggest things that is happening is just when there is rising cost of living, people are struggling to find housing, people are struggling to pay for groceries, and all these other things going on. There's always a tendency for these kinds of anti-immigrant sentiments to come up, and other things that are kind of trying to put some blame on someone other than yourself, right? Because it's not every each individual's fault that they're struggling financially or whatever, but there's a lot of tendency to try to blame someone, right?
So
and I think we're seeing that with people blaming government, but people are also blaming immigrants as well too.
So I want to dig into some of the data here, because I mentioned that 56% of those surveyed believe that asylum seekers receive too many benefits compared to other residents, and you've drawn the distinction here, which is important and critical. I acknowledge that, between refugees and asylum seekers as well. But can you break down what people do receive? Because what is the actual reality there? If this perception is out there, if people are believing this, I just want to understand, a little bit about what it is that somebody might receive when they arrive here.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really important, because when you look at what newcomers do receive, and specifically different refugee streams, whether that's asylum seekers or government-assisted refugees or privately sponsored refugees, it isn't different from the Canadian-born population. In fact, generally what happens is they're made eligible for the existing programs that we have available for the Canadian population. So an example would be for asylum seekers or refugee claimants. We usually call it in Canada, more often it's called asylum seekers south of the border. They're eligible for social assistance, which is a program that is open to any Canadian person, and their rates are the same for them. They're not different. They're not more or anything like that. For government-assisted refugees, they have a separate stream. They call that the Resettlement Assistance Program. But again, the rates are tied to the rates of social assistance. Mm-hmm. So whichever province you're in, it's the same as social assistance. So it's not more. And I did want to point out in the report, people are really distrusting of social media. And I think some of the misinformation about what refugees might receive actually spreads on social media, right? So I just wanted to point out that too, because I thought that was an interesting statistic in the report, that people are quite distrustful of social media, and we've seen
some of this though
a lot of this misinformation spread in that way.
I just want to interject, because we have a lot to cover here. Some of this, though, is it was worded too many benefits. So some of this is going to be attitudinal as well. If somebody really believes there's too many benefits, they may hold the view that if we have, and you do hear this from people, right, that we have needs in Canada that are all here. So for people that are going to be coming in to meet their needs as well, why don't we halt for a moment and deal with the needs for the people that are already here within our borders? How do you speak to that, and what for you may be concerning in that in that narrative?
Well, when we're talking about refugees, we are talking about people who are fleeing war, right? Either they're fleeing war or they're fleeing some kind of persecution, could be sexual orientation, that they're being discriminated against, gender, other sort of considerations. So these are not like economic immigrants, right, that are coming here with the only purpose of working, although they get working right away, right? But yeah, I think that's something we really do have to consider is, like giving them access to the basic programs that other folks in Canada have is really not a lot. It's in fact, I think they struggle more than most Canadians, right? Because they don't have the social connections and other things in place that the rest of the population would have, right? So, but yeah, I still go back to saying that for sure, like the programs are not more. They are the same. They're the same programs that we have, like social assistance and other things. And in fact, there are some programs that some refugees can't access. So I know housing comes up a lot, and a rent assist program, for example, which is a Manitoba-based benefit for low-income folks, it's not something that refugee claimants can access. So some of those things are actually not open to the newcomer population. So I would say they, in some ways, depending on their status, they do receive less, actually, benefits than others.
So we do have sports coming up here, and I apologize, but I do want to ask this last quick question here, because I'm wondering while we talk about this, we're talking about people who are impacted by this, and I wonder when it comes to feeling welcomed right now, what are you hearing from newcomers that you work with in Manitoba?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are hearing that people are not necessarily feeling as welcome, feeling unsafe, and having some interactions with folks that are expressing these kind of views that we've seen rising in this report, right? So, in fact, I've witnessed it, a few interactions in my own community, right, that I've seen. So, yeah, I think it's really on, like, individuals can make a difference, right? If you have a chance to express some welcoming behavior towards a newcomer, whether
we should all think about doing that. Yes.
Yeah.
Emily, thank you very much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Emily Halderson is Manitoba Association of Newcomer Serving as Organizations Provincial Coordinator, and with us via Zoom this morning. You can find the full report and offer your own feedback to it online, cbc.ca/Manitoba. We are covering the CMHR report yesterday. 6:26, we do need to move along to morning sports. It's Tuesday morning. Scott Reguera is here. Hello.
Hey, Marcy.
Hockey, the Jets are home and looking for payback.
Yeah, against the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champion, and the team that beat them 5-0 on Saturday night. Head coach Scott Arniel thinks the team's ready.
Our group has done a really good job, whether it's success or an off night where we've been able to turn around and refocus and come back. I really like practice. Just asked them to make sure the detail was good, and I thought it really was in all the drills. And all that does is just prepare them. It gets them kind of forgetting, not forgetting, but getting away from what happened on Saturday, move into the next day here, and let's get going forward.
There you are, Scott Arniel, who says that as the Jets, after this game, go back out on the road, that defenseman Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola will travel with the team on the upcoming road trip. Puck drop tonight against the Panthers, though, 7 o'clock.
Let's switch gears. There's a survey that suggests that more Canadian girls than ever are playing sports. It's interesting. When I saw a different headline on this survey, it made it negative. Yeah. It said, but, because there is a bit of a but here as well, right?
Yeah, there's half empty and half full approaches on this. The survey, just released by the advocacy group Canadian Women in Sport, Marcy, says 63% of school-age girls now participate in some sort of athletic endeavor. That participation rate is the highest ever, and only slightly behind boys, who are at 68%. Experts attribute the growth in part to more visibility of women's pro sports in media and online. Here's former Olympian Marnie McBean.
They want to create sport in their own image. They want to make sport as feminine as they want to be, but also as competitive as they want to be. They want to be who they are, and they see that now on TV. You watch the PWHL, it's a physical sport. It's amazing. it doesn't have to be dumbed down to be girls' sport. So the future, I think, is really exciting.
Exciting, perhaps, but still with room to grow, Marcy. This survey suggests as girls move into their late teen years, they drop out at a much higher rate than boys do. At 16, only half of young Canadian women are still involved. So, as mentioned, you can read more on this story up on our website this morning.
And I just want to say this, because you and I talk a lot about women's sport. Part of it is also watching women's sport. Supporting women's sport, being a spectator in women's sports, acknowledging the competitiveness.
You mean going out to the stands and supporting as opposed to just watching on TV, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean all of it, actually, and being pretty vocal about it, I think, right? Because that teenage age is when it's sort of, I'm a woman, so it's when you start to get these messages that are fed to us that say, well, look at the men, look at the boys. They're getting bigger, stronger, faster. We'd rather watch them. We're not so interested in what you're doing on the courts anymore. Like, there's a real shift there.
It's a mentality shift too, right? And in this survey, the report was that most of the girls felt like that sports is still very much geared towards guys first. So that's a problem.
Finally, let's talk about what's going on in soccer. There's a lot.
Yeah, Canada's men's team in Toronto tonight for a spot in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals. They're up against Suriname. They've had trouble scoring under Jesse Marsh, their new coach, who's otherwise been quite successful with the Marcy. They've only had 9 goals, Canada, in the 12 games they've played under Marsh, so they're hoping for more, and they hope that it leads to a win tonight against Suriname. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow morning.
All right, appreciate that, Scott. Thank you.
You bet.
That's Scott Reguera with sports. Coming up, we're going to get an update on Movember. Do you have some people in your life growing mustaches? We're going to talk about the actual causes behind it and how it's shifted for 2024. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we've got some light rain. It is 4 degrees. Temperature sticking close to 3 today. This rain will turn into snow this evening. And it had to happen, that snowfall. Depending where you are in this province, you could see a thick blanket of the white stuff. Between 15 and 30 centimeters of snow is expected in parts of western Manitoba. That includes Riding Mountain and the Dauphin area. In the Winnipeg area, it is a special weather statement, as well as parts of the Interlake, Pembina, and Red River valleys under this statement. Rain today, changing to snow this evening. Winnipeg expecting 2 to 4 centimeters. A snowfall warning for the Thompson area of northern Manitoba with 15 to 25 centimeters forecast today. More Manitobans will be able to get new hips and knees starting next year. The province will announce $4 million in funding for joint replacement surgeries as part of today's throne speech. 800 more surgeries will happen every year, and they will take place at the Selkirk Regional Health Centre. Premier Wab Kinew says he wants Manitobans needing surgery to regain their freedom.
This is all about giving Manitobans who are waiting for a hip surgery or a knee surgery what they want, which is a date to get that procedure. We're making the investment in staffing. Having more people on the front lines means that you can be seen more quickly.
Today's throne speech kicks off a new short session of the Manitoba Legislature. The legislature is scheduled to sit until December 5th. A Winnipeg ER doctor calls overcrowding at the Grace Emergency Department this weekend a catastrophe. Dr. Doug Ailofson, who is also running for the Federal Liberals in Winnipeg West, says when he left his shift Sunday evening, there were 52 active patients in a department designed for 30. He says every hallway was jammed with stretchers to make room for an additional 40 patients in the waiting room.
It's quite frankly dangerous because we're in a catch-22 because there's no way you can safely care for that many active patients. We don't have nearly enough staff, so everyone is basically running thin. There are staff members that are on the verge of tears trying to manage what's going on.
Ailofson says there's a backlog because people aren't being discharged from the hospital. He says most of the cases this weekend involved seniors with minor injuries who are often too fragile to discharge home. Ailofson wants to see more investment in long-term care beds, social services, and home care. A spokesperson for Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the province is working on adding staff and beds at Grace Hospital. Some people in Altona are upset by comments made by their MLA following a fatal crash. A woman and her 8-year-old daughter died after a semi-trailer collided into their SUV on a highway west of Altona on Friday. Borderland PC MLA Josh Gunter posted on Facebook, the semi-driver should be deported if he's not a Canadian citizen. He also wrote, "Send them back," in reference to what he calls foreign truck drivers. Gunter later wrote he did not intend to target people, but Lori Duick, who lives in the Altona area, says the initial post suggests otherwise.
In at least 3 instances, he directly targeted foreign individuals. Not only that, but the words that just stick with me, which are so disgusting, send them back. It seems like his intent was, in fact, to further a racist agenda.
RCMP have only said the semi-driver is a 25-year-old man from Brampton, Ontario. He has not been charged at this time. Gunter declined our request for an interview. The Brandon Police Service needs to hire more officers. The force says of its 110 positions, only 91 officers are in place. About 50% of the service went through the Assiniboine College Public Safety Program before applying to be an officer. Jackie Watsky is the college's chair of public safety. The former Winnipeg police chief says 95% of students have a job in the industry when they graduate. That means stiff competition across Canada for qualified people.
Police agencies right across the country are in a desperate situation that they're looking for suitable candidates. If they can get candidates who have a level of training and a level of experience, they gobble them up pretty quickly.
Brandon Police is offering signing bonuses and a new training program to help get boots on the ground. The city of Winnipeg could run out of sewer capacity in as few as 4 years if the North End sewage treatment plant upgrades are not completed soon. A city report for Water, Waste and Environment Committee says those upgrades are needed urgently. As the current growth rate of the city, the existing plant is going to reach capacity by early 2028. The report says upgrades are needed for the biosolids facility to meet that growth. That phase of the work on the plant has soared to more than $1 billion. Last year, the 3 levels of government signed a funding agreement of $553 million. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says various brands of carrot products are being recalled in connection to a U.S. recall linked to an E. coli outbreak. An E. coli outbreak in carrots sold in grocery stores. The affected brands in the Canadian recall include, among others, PC Organics, Compliments Organic, and Cal Organic. You can hear more about this recall as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and you can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Walsh from our busy news center this morning. 7:36 a.m. Rainy Tuesday. Abby's here with our regional forecast. Good morning again.
Good morning. We're looking at most of the province under these winter warnings and special weather statements today with heavy snow, strong winds, and hazardous travel conditions expected through into Wednesday. We're going to see rain change into snow in a lot of the regions. This winter storm warnings is in effect for the Brandon area and parts of the north. Snow is expected to accumulate. We're going to be, especially in the northeast corner of the province. It will be breezy and chilly, and the wind chill is going to make it even feel cooler. Winnipeg currently 4 degrees, light rain we're seeing outside. We're heading for a steady 3 today. Brandon is sitting at 1 with light rain, a winter storm warning in effect. That rain will be turning to snow, bringing about 2 centimeters today, and that would continue into tonight. You'd get to see around 10 centimeters accumulation and windy conditions to come with that. Thompson is sitting at 0. Light drizzle you're seeing at this time. You should see about 15 to 25 centimeters of rainfall in that snow in that region, which would be developing this morning, and some blowing snow coming in the afternoon. Churchill at -2 and cloudy. it's going to be a cloudy day for you. There's a chance of a light snow and freezing rain to come to that region. Temperatures holding steady near zero for that region. Down in Dauphin, we're looking at 1 degree and light rain, a winter storm warning also in effect for that region. Expect rain turning into snow. You should see about 10 centimeters that they forecast for that region. Gimli at 5 with light rain. This would continue to snow after midnight. You will see about 10 millimeters in the forecast. Steinbach at 4, Morris at 4. We're looking at about 25 millimeters of rain, followed by 2 centimeters of snow in those regions. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 4.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Busy. And how about the commute, Corey?
Yeah, well, here in the city, one issue, Cavalier and Portage, lights are flashing red in all directions. There was a multi-vehicle collision there earlier. There's a down traffic standard, so you just want to treat that as a 4-way stop. Not sure how backed up it is. As for the highways, really the only issue at this point, I know that in 24 hours or so, it's going to look a lot different, but right now it's visibility. I've been watching that visibility slowly deteriorate throughout the morning, all the way up from Swan River in western Manitoba down to Killarney. So it's mostly in western Manitoba. So if you're hitting the highway, you can still drive just fine, but it might be a little bit harder to see ahead of you. So just be careful. But if you do see anything else going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. I'll let folks know what you're seeing or not seeing. 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
21 minutes to 8 o'clock. We got time to slide a call on here, and we want to because today is Women's Entrepreneurship Day in this country. The federal government says some studies show that by advancing gender equality and women's participation in the economy, Canada could add up to $150 billion in GDP. We asked you to shout out your women entrepreneurs in Manitoba.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Schultz, and I would love to tell you about my sister, Lisa Zaretsky. She is a woman entrepreneur here in Manitoba. She lives in Morden, and she has the Apothecary of Morden. My sister, in her pharmacy, helps people to understand what part of their health and wellness that they can improve. Aside from providing them with their prescriptions, she gives them opportunity to engage their mind, body, and soul in various exercises and contributions that will only positively impact their health and well-being. I constantly admire her and all the work that she does. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's been pretty difficult for her to maintain her business, and she, with sadness, is going to be leaving her store within the next month. I would like to wish her well in her next endeavors and keep going, my sister. Yeah. Bye for now.
Kind of a sad ending to that call, given that she's leaving, but also maybe a reality of, difficulties of doing business as well. Something to be explored there. Thank you so much for shouting out your woman entrepreneur. We're getting other folks shouting out on Facebook here. I'll share a few. Liz Francis says, my beautiful daughter Charlotte, who owns and operates an Indigenous supply store called Tacosa Tom's. It's on Long Plain First Nation, Manitoba. Check it out. Catherine G shouting out Amanda Buse, who owns Coal and Canary and has found lots of success with her candles. And finally, Tasha Spillett writing in Indigo Arrows. I know that business. Destiny is an incredible and intentional, talented artist. Her textiles hold ancestral knowledges, and her brand is committed to community care. She's all around a beautiful human and a skilled businesswoman. So shout out your woman entrepreneur, Manitoba, and don't be shy if it's you. Tell us about your business, your work, what keeps you going, what you need to grow your business in this province. 788-3205, or you can write to us on Facebook. That's my Marcy Marcusa page. Well, let's turn our attention from women entrepreneurs to men who are growing mustaches. We are now just over halfway through November, which means we're seeing all kinds of stashes out there. Many men participate in Movember. It is a leading men's health charity all around the globe. They participate in the Grow a Mo campaign, but there's a lot of other ways to get involved. There's some upcoming events locally, and we want to also talk about those. So Jesse Thomas is with us via Zoom. Jesse is a Winnipeg Movember ambassador and with us now. Hi there.
Hi, good morning.
How's your stash going?
I think it's going okay. I was pleased that these media things came up in the back half of the month. Sometimes they come up early, and we're still in our infancy here, and it's a little embarrassing. But I'm feeling okay this morning.
I love that you use the term "we're still in our infancy." You mean you and your mustache, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why do you participate in this? You've done this for, I think it's 11 years.
Yeah, so I've done it formally, like fundraising, for 11 years. I started out, I think like a lot of people, I was growing the mustache just for a laugh. Didn't even know there was a charity involved. And I would just grow it just to get some cheap laughs. And finally, somebody saw me and brought up Movember, and I didn't even know what he was talking about. And it was kind of embarrassing. So I went online and did some research, realized what a good cause it was, and have been on board ever since, fundraising, and just become really passionate about Movember and the work that they do.
So for those that don't know the work that they do, tell us just briefly about sort of what Movember supports.
So Movember's the leading men's health charity, like you said before, and the sort of main focuses that it has, where it directs all its funds, is research towards prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and men's mental health and suicide prevention.
And that's actually been added because in the early days, it was really the physical, the prostate cancer, as you mentioned, and awareness and prevention. Mental health has really crept in. How valuable is that, do you think, for people to understand?
So important. And I think especially for men, there's often an imbalance and a kind of resistance to be willing to talk about these things. But it's a very real problem, especially, what we saw through the pandemic. Lots of problems there. So it's been really good to see that added to Movember's cause, because it's really important, and we need to get those conversations happening. Whether the mustache is what starts that thing, if it can start with a laugh and then maybe take that conversation where it needs to go, or whatever it is we have to do, it's really important that we get that message out there.
Has participating and learning and obviously being part of this for years now affected how you think about your own physical health when it does come to prostate cancer prevention and such?
Yeah, I think it definitely, it just kind of shines a light on it, and it makes me refocus on what's important physically and mentally. Checking in on the men in my life and all the things that we tell ourselves that we should do all the time. Same thing as we approach the holiday season, right? It's just a good excuse to get together with people and reconnect, and the things that we always want to do, but always manage to find ways to be too busy. It's just a good reminder to kind of check in with yourself and with the people in your life.
You've got some fun and sexy fundraising events. And when I say sexy, I'm thinking about the Scotch tasting at King and Bannatyne.
So we wrapped that up. That was early this month. We do that every single year.
Yeah.
That's such a fun event. It happens at King and Bannatyne every year. So unfortunately, that one's already come and gone for the year, but we will certainly be doing that for the foreseeable future. So definitely follow us on Movember Winnipeg, or follow King and Bannatyne. We do that every single year. We have an unbelievable host come. His name's Darren Rayside. He takes us through 6 samples. You learn a bunch. It's delicious. The restaurant puts out a full spread of food. It's a really, really fun event. We raised, I think, $1,400 this year for the charity just from that event. So
that's
it's outstanding.
Awesome. The one coming up is November 30th, I believe, and it involves music.
Yeah, so we call that the Stash Bash. It's our annual benefit concert for Movember. So it's hosted every year by Big Heist Brass Band. This year we are welcoming Chickadee as our opening act. They're like a really cool sort of jazz fusion funk sort of vibe. It's going to be really cool. So that you can expect to see lots of like horns, saxophones, trumpets, and stuff like that in both bands. Some really cool fusion type music. It's happening at Times Changed on Main Street on Saturday, November 30th, and tickets are still available for that.
How do men tend to react to Movember? Obviously, you're an ambassador for this. I'm wondering what you hear from other men.
I think it starts the same way I said I started out before. It's obviously it's a laugh. It's how Movember started in the first place. It was a group of guys in Australia who grew mustaches leading up to a friend's birthday party just as a joke. They wanted to show up and just have a cheap laugh. So that's how a lot of people get started. They just think it's funny. Mustaches are not really in style right now, so it's a good way to do something silly and funny. But then usually once people kind of learn what it's about, those conversations get going, and they become pretty excited about it.
Sometimes once people grow a stash, though, do they sort of not do it year in and year out? Like, how do you encourage people to keep going with this, and why it's important?
Yeah, there's sometimes like most things with most people, they'll get involved for a bit and then maybe it'll fizzle out. So the most important thing I would encourage people to try to do is to actually register on Movember.com and try to get even a few pledges. That I find that once you kind of do that and you commit yourself to a goal and you ask people for some donations, that's kind of what really got me started and really committed to the fundraising. If you just grow a mustache for fun, it's great. You know, you're advertising with your face and you're spreading the word. That's awesome. But actually registering and getting on board for real, setting yourself a goal, whether that's a financial goal. You can also set yourself a physical activity goal for the month. So you can set what they call it a move goal. So you can walk or run or bike or lift or whatever you want to do throughout the month to try to raise some awareness and some funds that way. But once you do that and you commit yourself, I find that people are more likely to come back and get on board.
Thanks for telling us about your passion, Jesse. What's going to happen to the rest of that stash now in the last 2 weeks? Does it get bushy or what goes on with you?
Yeah. It tends to grow this way, not down. I would love to get some I don't know what you call that, some overhang or something like that, but it'll just kind of be bushy, I think.
Well, my husband's got a really epic stash, and I'm not really even allowed to touch it. It's very finely manicured and cut, so I understand the pride that comes with a good mustache. Thanks for showing us yours today. Appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. Thank you very much.
You take care.
You too.
That's Jesse Thomas, Winnipeg Movember ambassador. And so the Stash Bash Movember fundraiser concert, that's the next upcoming one that they have going on, is November 30th. It is at Times Changed if you want to check it out. And if you want to read more about the cause, of course, you can go to Movember's events on, pages on social media or to their website.
Are there better ways for us to talk to each other? And could that help us build a better society? Novelist and poet Ian Williams wants to start a conversation about conversations. Hi, I'm Nala Ayed. Join me all next week as Ideas presents the 2024 CBC Massey Lectures, What I Mean to Say, Remaking Conversations in Our Time.
Ideas, weeknights at 8:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
There's more to community than location. It's about the spaces we share, physically and digitally, the points of view that divide or unite us. Gen Z, let's get to know each other. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to RRC Polytech's Notre Dame campus November 18th to 29th. Live radio, live streaming, and your point of view. Let's talk. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
Well, Jim Agapito is who you're hearing there is actually at CBC this morning. He's going to join us in studio after 8 o'clock to tell us more about a story from Red River College. The new state-of-the-art simulation lab that revolutionizes medical learning in this province officially had its ribbon cutting opening yesterday. We have a special report on that. There's video as well to share. So check us out on our YouTube stream if you're following the show that way. You can have something to watch as well. So that is coming up. He's going to tell us what it's going to do for students who are entering the field. So that's after 8. Right now, we're getting close to that time. It's 10:02 currently. It's 4 degrees with that rain continuing to fall in Winnipeg. And of course, the storm warnings. Between 15 and 30 centimeters of snow expected in parts of Westman, and Thompson could see 15 to 25 centimeters of snow. Our rain tonight will turn to snow, and we're expecting in Winnipeg about 2 centimeters, in case you're curious. Well, next on the program, let's go back to a horrible blizzardy day in January. During that January blizzard, almost 3 years ago, a family of 4 from India, including 2 little kids, froze to death as they tried to walk across the border from Manitoba to Minnesota. Their names were Jagdish Patel, his wife Vaishaliben, their 11-year-old daughter Vyangi, and their 3-year-old son Dharmeek. They all died. U.S. law enforcement alleged that Steve Shand and Harsh Kumar Patel, no relation to the victims, were 2 of the human smugglers involved in their deaths. Both men have pleaded not guilty, and as you may have been hearing in news, their trial began yesterday in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. That's about 300 kilometers southeast of the Emerson border crossing, and that is where we find CBC reporter Caitlin Gowerlick. She's in Fergus Falls. She's been attending the trial, and she's going to be there all week. She's here to report on day 1. Good morning.
Good morning.
So before we do get into what happened yesterday on day 1, can you remind listeners of some of the details of this story?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure lots of Manitobans remember some of those details you talked about and remember hearing this news when it first came out. I mean, like you said, it just was horrible and really heartbreaking. And then it wasn't too long after that, after the Patel family's bodies were found, that we heard an arrest had been made in a case on the other side of the border. So that was Steve Shand. He's one of the 2 accused in this trial we're following this week. He was found nearby with 2 of the other migrants in the van he was driving. Prosecutors say those 2 migrants were traveling in the same group as the Patel family. So as agents were talking to Shand at the time, after they found him in the van, 5 more migrants then sort of emerged from the fields around them. And they'd really been, out in the blizzard too. And one of them had really severe frostbite and was so hypothermic that court documents say she was going in and out of consciousness. So that was almost 3 years ago. Flash forward now to earlier just this year, Harsh Kumar Patel, the other co-accused in this case, was arrested, picked up in Chicago. So the allegation here is that Harsh Kumar Patel coordinated the smuggling. He knew Steve Shand because they both lived in Florida, and that Patel hired Shand to pick up the migrants once they crossed over the border into the States.
So let's go to day one. Jury selection was yesterday. What kinds of questions were the more than 60 potential jurors being asked?
Yeah, so it was a pretty wide range, actually, but there were also some common themes. So several questions had to do with things like, people's views on topics like immigration, law enforcement, things that are sort of related to this case. For example, a couple of people raised their hands when asked if they had strong opinions about the immigration system that might affect them. One guy raised his hand when the judge asked if anyone had ever had an unpleasant experience with immigrants. Jurors also were asked about things like whether they'd worked in law enforcement, whether they've had bad experiences with law enforcement, where they get their news, all kinds of things. And some of those questions actually did end up leading to several people being excused from the jury pool. Several people said they didn't feel they could be impartial, and that included some who said they had just been following the case too closely to be impartial. Other people said they felt they'd be biased by the fact that the case involves the deaths of young children.
Caitlin, what did the prosecution and the defense say in their opening arguments?
So for the prosecution, they say it really boils down to one thing, and that's that they allege that these two men put profit above people's lives as part of a large human smuggling scheme. They also told jurors that they can expect to hear evidence during the trial this week, including seeing text messages that they say show the accused, both of them, knew the dangers of the extreme weather that they're alleged to have sent those migrants out into. And the defense, on the other hand, had totally different stories. So Steve Shand, his defense lawyers described him as sort of an unsuspecting cab driver who only knew his co-accused because Patel would hire him to drive his associates around Florida, where we know they both lived. Shand's lawyer said when those gigs started taking him further north, though, closer to the border, he didn't question it at first. He thought, I'm just driving a cab. It's what I do for a living, right? And his defense says by the time he realized something was off, it was too late. And then Patel's lawyers, on the other hand, have a totally other story. They say investigators just straight up got the wrong guy. His lawyers told jurors that they won't hear any evidence that Patel conspired with anyone about anything because that evidence just doesn't exist. The lawyer kind of described his client as someone who came to the U.S. from India for the same reason that a lot of people do, right? They see it as this land of opportunity. And he said on one hand, his client was sort of unlucky in that he says he got to America and ended up being wrongfully accused of something he didn't do. But he also said he feels his client is lucky to have ended up in a place where he's considered innocent unless proven guilty.
I understand the defense tried to have some evidence withheld from the jury yesterday. What happened?
Yeah, so that actually happened like first thing yesterday morning, so before the jury was even chosen. And usually, like if that happened in Canada, that would mean we couldn't talk about it, right? Because the jury didn't hear it. But the rules are a little bit different in the States. We're allowed to, so here's what happened. The issue there was about whether jurors should be shown photos of the Patel family's frozen bodies. One of the defense lawyers argued that he felt that would only cause extreme prejudice to the accused, but prosecutors say the photos are necessary to show both how inadequate the clothing was that the family was given for that weather, and also they say it shows that the family's boots match the ones found on the other migrants in the area. And on that, the judge actually did ultimately end up deciding the photos can be shown to the jury.
What can we expect as this trial is going to continue this week, Caitlin?
Yeah, so now that all that, the jury selection and opening statements are done, we're on to hearing evidence now for the rest of the week, hopefully starting this morning. Prosecutors said in their trial brief filed a few weeks ago that that'll include people like, law enforcement officers who responded to the scene, investigated this alleged human smuggling scheme. And we're also expected to hear from 2 Canadian forensic pathologists who are expected to testify about the Patel family's autopsies. Another kind of interesting thing here, is that there are some other witnesses who prosecutors say may be called. So we don't know if we'll hear from these people, but That list includes a man who prosecutors say was actually part of this human smuggling scheme, and he sent many of those migrants to Manitoba to cross into Minnesota around the same time as the Patels. And we may also hear from some of those migrants who are said to have been in that same group as the Patels during the trip where they died. So lots coming up this week, and hopefully we'll be able to shed some more light on this story soon.
Thank you very much, Caitlin, for being with us today. Appreciate your reporting.
Thanks for having me.
That's Caitlin Gowerluck. She is a reporter with CBC Manitoba. We just reached her live. She's in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, where that trial continues. The 2 men accused of human smuggling across our Manitoba border, that's now underway. Caitlin will be filing her stories from the trial all week, so please follow what details she learns at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Speaking of news developing, here's Heather Wells.
Yes, and we do have a developing story. Winnipeg police want you to stay away from part of the University of Manitoba campus this morning. They have received reports of a male armed with a knife. Now, the area they're talking about is the Allen Building at 30 Sifton Road. There's a large police presence in that part of the U of M campus. And again, people are being asked by police to avoid the immediate area of 30 Sifton Road as they investigate reports of a man armed with a knife. As well, the city of Winnipeg could run out of sewer capacity in as few as 4 years if the North End sewage treatment plant upgrades aren't completed soon. A city report for water, waste and environment says those upgrades are needed urgently. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we'll try to get more information about what's happening. In the meantime, as Heather said, avoid 30 Sifton Road, the Allen Building at U of M, and the developing story there. Light rain falling 4 degrees. We're going to get 25 millimeters today before it turns to snow tonight, and lots of snow in the north and in Westman. Stay tuned. We'll take you to Red River College to learn about innovation.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlenger sitting in for Tom Power. Maggie Rogers is one of the most assured artists I've ever seen. She'll tell you what she's learned by trusting her instincts and why putting fun first on her latest album changed her approach to songwriting.
Q this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Texting during class, interrupting classmates, getting there late. A new study says rudeness among students is on the rise and teachers are struggling to deal with it. How to bring back civility in schools and beyond, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A sentencing in a national security trial in Hong Kong is prompting international condemnation. 45 activists were ordered to serve prison time for their roles in a pro-democracy opposition movement. Many were sentenced to serve up to 10 years. Freelance reporter Laura Westbrook has more.
A sea of umbrellas lined the perimeter of the court as hundreds gathered outside, a symbol of the pro-democracy movement. Inside, 3 judges handed down sentences ranging from more than 4 years to 10 years, the harshest going to former law professor Benny Tai, who was labelled the organiser of the 47 activists. Chan Po-ying, the wife of former lawmaker known as Long Hae Leung, said this after her husband was jailed for 6 years and 9 months.
The whole trial is unfair because what they have done is only, to do what the basic law have laid down. It is their right to put pressure to the administration to let them have to respond to the majority of Hong Kong people.
Many have spent the past 3 years behind bars. The charges relate to an unofficial primary vote to pick candidates for an election. Prosecutors accuse the activists of plotting to paralyse the government and force then leader Carrie Lam to resign by seizing a majority in the Legislative Council and using it to block budgets. The city's security chief, Chris Tang, said the sentencing reflected the severity of the offence.
And we are looking in the judgment to see if there's any grounds that we do not agree, and we consider that it warrants for a review.
For some, the sentencing is a knockout blow to dissent in the city. Laura Westbrook for CBC News, Hong Kong.
Russia's defense ministry claims Ukraine has fired U.S. long-range missiles into Russia. The unprecedented move comes as today marks 1,000 days since the Kremlin launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Thank you for ensuring that not a single one of the 1,000 days of this terrible war became a day of betrayal of our shared European values.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking to a special session of the European Parliament marking the day. The war has also been a topic at the G20 Leaders Summit in Brazil. As Karina Roman reports, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau concedes frank conversations don't necessarily lead to agreement.
I would have wanted to say things a lot stronger than in that communique, and I know a lot of my colleagues from G7 and advanced economies would have wanted that too.
Justin Trudeau says the language on the war in Ukraine in this year's G20 declaration does not reflect Canada's view that Russia is an illegal aggressor.
But the G20 is a collection of a whole bunch of different perspectives from around the world.
Trudeau says he supports U.S. President Joe Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to use American-supplied missiles to strike deeper into Russia, but he declined to speculate on what other nations will do if Donald Trump stops the U.S.'s financial and military support of Ukraine. Previously, Trudeau warned that there is no way all the allies in the world could make up for a withdrawal of U.S. support. Today, saying he and other leaders are focused on what can be done now and in the short term to make a difference. Karina Roman, CBC News, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Canada's Consumer Price Index rose in the month of October, coming in at 2%. That is up from the 1.6% increase in September. Statistics Canada has just released its latest inflation numbers, and the CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
This was almost precisely what economists had been expecting. And while a slight acceleration is a move in the wrong direction, there's nothing in this to make us think that the general trend around inflation is changing. The real driver here is what's called the base effect. It's just a way of looking at how prices last year are compared to where they are now. In this case, if we look at October's comparison, now to October of 2023, take gasoline prices. They're down 4%. But in September, that comparison was down a whopping 10.7%, and that difference is really what's driving things here. But it's important to remember, the rate of inflation only measures the rate of change. Most Canadians are still feeling extremely squeezed by high prices, and even if the rate of inflation is cooling, that certainly doesn't mean that prices are falling. To the contrary, it means those new high prices are here to stay. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Donald Trump is standing behind his pick for the next U.S. Attorney General. The president-elect has reportedly been working the phones to ensure the confirmation of Matt Gaetz. The former Republican representative from Florida has caused rifts within the party. Gaetz is accused of having sex with an underage girl in 2017. And now a lawyer representing that girl and her friend is speaking out. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what is the lawyer in this case saying?
Yeah, for the first time, we're now hearing what two witnesses told House lawmakers behind closed doors who were investigating those allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use by then Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who is now, of course, Trump's pick to be Attorney General. Now, lawyer Joel Leppard represents the two women who testified before the House Ethics Committee and said they told investigators Gaetz paid them for sex and illicit drugs while they were high school students. He says one of his clients described what she saw at a Florida house party back in 2017 when Gaetz was a member of Congress. Listen.
She was walking outside to the pool, and she observed to her right her friend, who was 17 at the time, having sex with Representative Gaetz. They were leaned up to what she described to as a game table of some type.
Now, Gaetz has long denied these allegations, and federal prosecutors looking into these claims 4 years ago didn't charge him. But now, with Gaetz's pick as Trump's Attorney General, this committee's investigation has taken on a whole new urgency, and there are growing calls by lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to see this report.
What can we expect next?
Yeah, members of the Ethics Committee will meet tomorrow to not only discuss their investigation, but whether they should release it. Now, technically, Gaetz is no longer in office, so Congress doesn't have jurisdiction over him. But considering this high-profile appointment, calls to make this report public are growing louder, as I mentioned earlier, on both sides of the aisle.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. A Canadian Labour Board will begin a hearing today into a strike at a nuclear medical facility. Workers at Best Theatronics in Ottawa have been off the job for more than 200 days. It has idled the company and put it in violation of regulations set out by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. The CBC's Campbell McDermott has the details.
We're not a greedy union. We just wanted a fair compensation.
James Thuart is a machinist at Best Theatronics in Kanata. The nuclear facility manufactures radiation therapy devices to treat cancer. Thuart and his colleagues have been on strike since May, demanding a pay rise. Owner Krishnan Suthantharan hasn't budged. He wouldn't agree to an interview, but said he's suffered $30 million in losses in recent years and might close the company. Best Theatronics faces another issue. It's not complying with the terms of its nuclear license, which requires $1.8 million set aside for any decommissioning costs. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Council has issued orders against Best Theatronics because its financial guarantee has lapsed. The nuclear regulator ordered the company to rectify the problem and improve security at the plant. Unifor, one of the unions representing the striking workers, says Suthantharan is flouting the law by refusing to negotiate. Lana Payne is Unifor's national president.
It's called union busting. That is what this employer is engaged in right now, and it's why we have labor laws in this country.
The union has lodged an unfair labour practices complaint. The Canadian Industrial Relations Board is hearing the case over the next 3 days. But Gilles Levasseur, a professor of business and law at the University of Ottawa, says
there's no legal requirement to actually settle inside a window or inside a certain framework.
That means the strike could drag on, with no end in sight. Campbell McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
The winner is Anne Michaels for Held.
Toronto poet-novelist Anne Michaels walked away with this year's Giller Prize. The literary award is given out every year to a Canadian author by a jury of their peers. Michaels' fiction novel, Held, dives into the impacts of war on generations. In her acceptance speech at last night's gala, Michaels called for the unity within the country's arts community.
Our literary history is one of phenomenal assertion. And now, as then, we need unity, not just within one community, but among all the arts, to forge practical alliances that proclaim our values.
And Michael's win comes with a $100,000 prize. And that is the latest national, international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. It is active. That's my word for the weather this morning. That's instead of saying that it's raining and it's snowing and it's going to continue in great amounts. We have a lot of warnings and watches on this Tuesday morning across Manitoba. So, we're going to be busy. Thanks for joining us. This is CBC's Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, this half hour on the program, we're also busy trying to keep up with your comments. You're writing to us. You've been calling us about Women's Entrepreneurship Day, about the entrepreneurs in Manitoba you want to shout out in their stories. So we'll share some of that in a moment. Also, to school news, CBC's Jim Agapito got a sneak peek into a brand new state-of-the-art simulation lab that revolutionizes medical learning, specifically in Manitoba. So he is in studio. He's going to walk us through this and tell us what it will do to students who are entering the field in this province. So stay tuned for that. Now, to serious matters this morning in developing news and school news of a different kind. Heather Wells is in with something we just got on the air for you at before 8 o'clock. Heather.
Yes, good morning. And that developing story concerns the University of Manitoba campus, where there is a large police presence right now, asking people to avoid the area around the Allen building. Police say they've received multiple reports of a male with a knife. Here is Claude Chansey with the Winnipeg Police Service.
We have all the protocols in place to be able to look for this male. We have asked the public to, and of course the student body, to stay away from that area as we can carry on our protocols here.
So once again, the area he's talking about is the physics building, the Allen building. It is at 30 Sifton Road on the University of Manitoba campus, Fort Garry campus, and police do have multiple units on the scene. We're going to take you to the campus of the U of M coming up in our next news at 8:30. As well, wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in this province are about to drop. The province is going to announce an additional 800 such surgeries will take place in Selkirk starting early in the new year. That announcement is going to be part of today's speech from the throne. We'll have more details coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So developing news this morning. Please stay close to our website and Facebook streams to learn more. Heather will be back on and we'll update you as we get more information about what's going on at U of M. Before we turn to the weather, Abby Adiyemi, Jim is here to share a story about Red River in a moment, but he's kind of got a weather-related thing that I think is sad. Jim, how did you get to work today?
Well, I rode my motorcycle because, I've got to store it for the year, and I saw the weather and decided, you know what, I'm going to put all my rain gear on, and I'm just going to trudge through it as fast or as slow as I can.
Oh, what does it feel like? Let's bring Abby in here. You ride a motorcycle too. Do you store yours?
I thought the rule is store your bike second week of October. If you want to stretch it, take it till the last week of October.
Oh my gosh, Abby, we all know that I'm a little bit of a daredevil, so anytime I can get out there and ride my bike and smile coming to work, I'm
Jim's
happy.
Pushing it.
I'm going to push it.
He's pushing it.
I just love it. The rain wasn't, it was bad, but it was fun. And that's the thing. You got to smile before your commute to work.
That wind chill is something else on the bike.
I went slow, and
you know what, Jim, you got it in just under the wire, because as we're all about to hear from Abby, you might have had a little rain this morning, but there's way more coming, and we're going to turn to snow later.
Definitely. We have that wintry blast that is going to be hitting most of the regions. We have winter storms, snowfall warnings, all in effect across the province with varying amounts of snow expected. Now, that's depending on your location. Western Manitoba, including Riding Mountain and the Dauphin area, is expected to receive about 15 to 30 centimeters of snow, while parts of the Interlake, the Pembina Valley region, the Red River Valley region, we will, including even Winnipeg, we're like under this special weather statement with rain changing to snow later this evening. And Winnipeg in that mix should be seeing about 2 to 4 centimeters, but some areas could even see up to 15. And if we go up north, we're having that snowfall warning in place for Thompson and surrounding areas, where we hear that 15 to 25 centimeters of snow is expected. And if you're in these areas, just be prepared for challenging conditions and take extra caution on the road. Right now, Winnipeg, 4 degrees, light rain we're seeing outside. Keep that umbrella handy. Tonight, the rain will be switching to snow late in the evening, getting breezy from the northwest, and we'll see temperatures dropping to around -2. But for the rest of the day, temperatures will be holding steady around 3 degrees.
See? Terrible motorcycle
It's
weather.
not a motorcycle morning for sure.
All right, let's get into the commute details. So, Corey, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Jim, definitely don't go to Western Manitoba today. That's where the visibility is pretty poor right now. So far, I haven't heard anything about actual highway conditions. They seem to be okay, but just I've been watching the visibility deteriorate throughout the morning, according to Manitoba 501, all the way from Swan River, Dauphin, down south through McCreary, Wawanesa, Souris, all the way down to Bois Vane. Just poor visibility throughout Western Manitoba. And that's only going to get worse over the next 24 hours. I imagine the commuter lines will be blowing up then, but by tomorrow morning. Other than that, nothing major to report here in the city. But if you do see something going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, we do have some time now at 8:16 on your Tuesday morning to talk about women entrepreneurs. It's Women Entrepreneurship Day across Canada, so we asked you to shout out your Manitoba entrepreneurs, and comments are flooding in here. Corey, what are we hearing?
Yeah, I heard from Andrea Richardson, who's shouting out Arden Brown, who owns Ears for Life Incorporated, Audiology Center, specialized in pediatrics, tinnitus, and auditory processing disorders.
I love that. Yeah. We also have folks writing in. Carol Townsley wrote in Ashley Calder. Ashley's been my massage therapist for years, but this summer she moved to South Osborne as well. Got a lot of shout outs for that neighborhood. In her own therapy room, she's trained in pregnancy, cupping, children, always listens and responds with treatment, and she collects items for women's shelters and other nonprofits every month as well.
Joy Reindeer Steele shouting out her friend Lisa Sinix Adamopoulos and the Seniors Moving Company, moving your senior family members with care and passion, which is lovely.
Beth Sternick shouting out Lilacs Studio, that's Lilax, as well as Decadence Chocolate is being shouted out. Jordan at Creatory with the number 8, that's the art gallery created 18 years ago. Kathleen Noel Black wrote in about that, says she provides opportunities to display for artists from the bizarre to the fabulous, and it's wonderful.
Sherry Pearson is shouting out her daughter Caitlin, who runs Prairie Independence Care Co. She's a healthcare aide with several years experience in a provincial setting, and she saw a need and started just over a year ago. Her business is a home care based business, filling in the shortfalls of provincial home care. And she started with approximately 3 employees and now has about 11 employees. And she works mostly out of Port Prairie, but also has clients Carmen, St. Claude areas. And she's very proud of her.
I'm going to end and shout out mine here, Corey, and there's a visual aid. So well, people can't see this. Look, I thought you'd be able to see it. Anyway, I'm showing my arm. I'm holding it up to the camera to show you on YouTube. But what I'm showing you is my tattoo because I got one this year. It's the first one I've ever got in my life, so it's meaningful to me. I went with my girlfriends, but we went to Melanie Smith's studio in St. Boniface. And I'm going to shout her out because she specializes in women's tattoos, and she talked about, the women that come in, and it was just a wonderful, lovely experience, but also because she's a co-founder of something in Manitoba, of something called Angels Inc. Foundation of Manitoba. And so what they do is they help men and women receive tattoos after trauma or after some medical procedures at no cost. So you put you register and you can apply and think of, cancer treatment, trauma, burns, alopecia, reasons you might need a tattoo. So shout out to you, Melanie. I know you were wonderful as I was there just as a chicken having my girlfriends hold my hand this year. So shout out to your Winnipeg or Manitoba woman entrepreneur. Please do 788-3205 or write to us on Facebook. Well, let's get to that story now at Red River College. As you know, Communities in Focus is focusing on Red River all this week and next. And we're going to be live actually next Wednesday morning, I believe it is, the 28th. That might be Thursday morning at Red River. So I'm excited about it. One of the things, though, that Jim was out seeing is really cool. For students entering the health and community care fields, real-world simulations can be daunting. For example, would a new nurse know how to work with a paramedic rushing a patient into triage? Or would a paramedic know how to communicate, talk to someone in child and youth care to help a child in need? With the help of the province, RRC Polytech just opened its new interdisciplinary health and community service simulation center at its Notre Dame campus. And Jim Agapito, who you heard, was there visiting the brand new facility, which had its ribbon cutting yesterday, by the way. He's here to tell us more about the experience. Hello again.
Hi, Marcy.
Okay, let's get into this. A simulation lab. Tell us a bit more about it.
So this new lab is a state-of-the-art facility at RRC. It simulates real-world scenarios for health and community care students entering the industry. Now, RRC has over 13 programs that will use the lab, which include things like nursing, paramedicine, veterinary technology, diagnostic, medical, sonography, or ultrasound, to name a few. But Marcy, I want you to get the full simulation experience, so here's a little bit of that in action.
Hey guys, how are we doing?
How are you?
Hey.
It's locking.
Who's doing the handoff? I am. Okay. Visualizing deformity, immobilized and splinted. Immobilize the deformity on both limbs. Immobilized and splinted.
So what you're hearing are paramedicine students rushing a patient with head trauma into triage. Now, nursing students quickly work with them to get them off that gurney, which you hear there, into a hospital bed. And this is the first time all of these students have worked together. So here's how paramedicine student Dylan Geddes felt about the situation you just heard.
First of all, this is amazing, this new facility they have. It's going to create a more realistic environment for us to work in. But not only that, the integration with the nursing and the other healthcare practices here, it's just going to get us to be able to cooperate a lot better, because once we're out in the field, we are working side by side all day long, every day. So start that early in the classroom, I think, is fantastic.
And here's how paramedicine student Caitlin Witt feels about practicing under these conditions.
I mean, in the real world, you are going into the hospitals, you're talking to nurses, so to be able to actually have that experience here before you're on the job, I think is really awesome. To be able to do that in a space where you can fail and you can, have room to make errors and to learn from. I think that's super beneficial and helpful before we're actually practicing on real people who need us.
This is so smart. I mean, really, when we talk about healthcare and the push to holistically understand what's going on, to have everyone interacting already at the learning stage. What does it look like, the actual simulation lab?
Well, Marcy, besides the hospital and triage rooms, there's a mock apartment, paramedicine station, ultrasound facility, boardrooms, and every piece of mobile medical equipment you can imagine. Now, it even has a lecture theater where students can peer into the simulations live, and it's great because they broadcast their classes to its many remote schools around the province. And there's even a room for the Indigenous community to smudge.
They included a smudge room.
Yeah, that was a conscious choice in the facility's design. RRC wanted to ensure that Indigenous students are comfortable within our healthcare system. So not only does the lab focus on Western medicine, but it also accommodates traditional medicine as well. And all the facility rooms have Indigenous names, and an Indigenous artist put beautiful floral murals on the walls.
Well, what kind of a facility, like for this kind of learning in these students, did RRC have before this, Jim?
Well, before that, Marcy, I gather was pretty tiny in comparison. Allison Cooper, who's the chair of nursing labs and simulations at RRC, can fill you in on that.
So 10 years ago, when I started in the nursing department, we didn't have any simulation. So I came on board as sort of the simulation expert, and we converted a storage room. So 600 square foot storage room. We literally moved buckets and mops out of it to build our first simulation space, which we still use today. We had a baby monitor that we got off Kijiji to watch the students in the space. To over 16,000 square feet is just incredible in 10 years. And to have the college see that simulation is such an important part of training all of our healthcare students is so lovely, that they've invested in this and realized that this is such an important piece.
Now, Allison says they've gone from having one bed in one room in 600 feet to 6 innovative spaces that house multiple beds with all new technology to help. It's quite a difference, Marcy.
And visually, if people are watching on YouTube this morning, or if you check out the video online, you're going to see it really looks like a hospital unit, right? How does Allison feel teaching that kind of in the new facility?
You know what, Marcy? For her as an educator, it means so much.
This is why I became an educator. It was for those moments where you see the students and you're like, this is what we are here for. We've taken them from the classroom, we've been able to teach them everything they need to know, and we can see that transition, that they can actually do it in real time on their own without somebody standing over their shoulder. It's that aha moment, that pride that I feel in the students. It's just incredible.
But Marcy, what puts a facility like this into perspective is how nursing student Olivia Groot feels about entering the field.
Yeah, it's hard. The schooling is really hard, but it's worth it. You know, we need nurses. We need compassionate nurses, you know, if we want to keep the system going. I think we need to be gentler with our nurses. They've gone through a lot. They're still going through a lot. This is really cool to have this. I think it's going to help Manitobans a lot because there's other students that come here, not just nurses and paramedicine. There's also vet techs, x-ray, MRI. So having a huge facility, and the public can use this space too. So it's really cool that we got to be a part of it.
Thanks so much for bringing this in, Jim. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Marcy.
And I hope you've been enjoying your time at Red River for Communities in Focus.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's a blast getting to meet the community and talking to a lot of, different people.
No doubt. Well, when you're talking to Jim or Nadia Kidwai, who both have office hours at Red River for Communities in Focus, as we focus on RRC Polytech, we want to mention that we have a live show. So that's next Thursday. Information Radio is going to be live at Red River. So if you're talking to them, please drop by and maybe you'll end up on the show. I know, Jim, we were just talking off air about putting together some panels of young people just to talk about learning and such. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for this morning. CBC's Jim Agapito. And if you want to check out what's going on with this story about the simulator, as I mentioned, there's a video online. The RRC facility is going to be in full use, by the way, come January. Pardon me, not 6, 8:26 a.m. Woohoo! I usually am given the time later, not earlier. But yeah, it's already 8:26. We have rain still falling in Winnipeg this morning, and we're expecting a lot of it. So up to 25 centimeters is what we could see before this turns to snow tonight. And of course, in northern Manitoba and western Manitoba, you could see lots of snow. Thompson could see 15 to 25 centimeters, and then between 15 to 25 centimeters expected in parts of Westman today. So we're under winter warnings and advisories as we get into our Tuesday here. Thanks for joining us. Let me just check our current temperature here in the city of Winnipeg. With that rain falling, we remain at 4 degrees, and for most of the day, we're going to be around 3, so we're going to lose a degree. We'll just drop 1 from where we are now. Well, we're coming up to news time at 8:30. There's developing news at the University of Manitoba campus, and police are saying to avoid specifically the Allen building at 30 Sifton Road. And so we're going to hear more about what is going on there as we've been trying to gather more information for you. So that's at 8:30 with Heather Wells. Stay right here. First, though, we have a touch of music from Danny Michel. This tune's called Don't Be So Hard on Yourself.
Broken promises and bridges burned. Don't be so hard on yourself. Best intentions and lessons learned. Don't be so hard on yourself. You fell short and you went too far. Don't be so hard on yourself. Yeah, life is just a shooting star. Don't be so hard on yourself. You only get one chance. It's your last dance and the last call. We all fall, so make it a joyride. Take it worldwide. It's alright. It's your life. You were looking for the courage to change. Don't be so hard on yourself. In a world that's broken down, brutal and strange. Don't be so hard on yourself. You beat yourself up for too many years. Don't be so hard on yourself. Lost memories and wasted tears. Don't be so hard on yourself. You only get one chance. It's your last dance and the last call. And we all fall, so make it a joyride. Take it worldwide. It's alright. It's your life. We've made it this far. We've made it this far. We've made it this far. We've made it this far.
Danny Michel on CBC, Polaris-nominated Ontario singer-songwriter. And if you're enjoying this morning, maybe you're going tonight. Danny Michel is playing the Weston Cultural Centre tonight along with fellow musician Steve Poltz. And I love this tune. Don't be so hard on yourself, people. I hope he does this one tonight if you're headed to the show. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. That light rain continues to fall. Our morning commute has been pretty uneventful in terms of getting out and about and around. So be careful, though, in case it is a little bit slick underfoot when you're walking. I know it's mild, but you never know. I know I had some slippery areas this morning. Was earlier. And we do, of course, have snow that's going to be affecting other parts of the province. So check the highways maybe before you go, just in case. 788-3093 is where you can update the commute, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we do have rain. It is 4 degrees. The rain expected to change to snow later this evening. Winnipeg police are asking students and the public to stay away from the physics building at the University of Manitoba campus. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there right now and joins us live. Megan?
So this is we're looking at a large police presence here at the University of Manitoba. What we're told is that around 6:30 this morning, a student spotted a man with a knife inside the one of the buildings here, the favorite building. So those buildings have been closed off. While we've been here, we've seen students and talked to some students who were standing outside. There was basically an announcement that went out over the system here at the U of M telling people to avoid this building. We were speaking with Claude Chansey, and he describes what police are doing inside these buildings.
The available units that are able to and have specialized skills to be able to look for this male are there currently. We are aware too that the Allen Building has a system of underground corridors as well, so that's all being covered as well.
We also had an alert going out over people's phones that basically was a warning about the alert that police were here searching the building looking for a male in black clothing armed with a knife. There are a number of tunnels through the area, and students that I spoke to said that inside the building there is police tape up, and I've seen police going in and out of the building searching for the suspect with the knife. There's no word if anyone's been injured, but right now in a number of the buildings connected to the Allen Building, the physics building, those classes are canceled because the building is closed. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thank you so much, Megan. And we will bring you the latest on this story as it develops through the morning right here on CBC Radio. Wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in this province are about to drop. The NDP government will announce an additional 800 such annual surgeries will take place in Selkirk starting early in the new year. The announcement will be part of today's speech from the throne. Premier Rob Canoe says it's all part of a province-wide approach to helping more Manitobans in need.
To be able to add capacity to serve Manitobans from all regions, and also to do that in the Interlake Eastern Health Region, I think is important because we want that healthcare to be close to home for as many people as possible, for everyone, and this is an important step towards that.
Today's throne speech kicks off a new short session of the Manitoba Legislature scheduled to sit until December 5th. Overcrowding in the Grace Emergency Department is being called dangerous and a catastrophe. Dr. Doug Ailofson says when he was leaving his shift Sunday evening, 52 active patients were in an emergency room designed for 30. Another 40 patients were in the waiting room. Ailofson, who is also running for the federal Liberals in Winnipeg West, says the ER had no beds to admit patients, so they had to wait on stretchers in the hallway.
We get a lot of elderly patients who, even if medically they could go home, they're so frail, there's no way we can discharge them. And we're trying to find beds. There are low acuity unit beds in the city, but they're chronically full, so patients can sometimes wait as much as a week.
Ailofson wants more investment in long-term beds, home care and social services. A spokesperson for the health minister tells CBC the province has added more nursing staff at the Grace, as well as more medicine and surgery beds. Some people in Altona are upset by comments made by their MLA following a fatal crash last Friday. A woman and her 8-year-old daughter died after a semi-trailer collided into their SUV. Borderland PC MLA Josh Gunter posted on Facebook the semi-driver should be deported if he's not a Canadian citizen. He also wrote, "Send them back," in reference to what he calls foreign truck drivers. Gunter later wrote he did not intend to target people, but Lori Dewick, who lives in the Altona area, says the initial post suggests otherwise.
In at least 3 instances, he directly targeted foreign individuals. Not only that, but the words that just stick with me, which are so disgusting, send them back. It seems like his intent was, in fact, to further a racist agenda.
RCMP have only said the semi-driver, a 25-year-old man, is from Brampton, Ontario. He has not been charged at this time. Gunter declined our request for an interview. The city of Winnipeg could run out of sewer capacity in as few as 4 years if the North End sewage treatment plant upgrades aren't completed soon. A city report for the Water, Waste and Environment Committee says those upgrades are needed urgently, as at the current growth rate of the city, the existing plant will reach capacity as early as 2028. And the report says upgrades are needed for the biosolids facility to meet that growth. And our top story this morning, Winnipeg police asking you to avoid part of the University of Manitoba campus after multiple reports of a man with a knife around the campus. In particular, they are focusing on the Allen Building on Sifton Road, and we will have the latest for you. You can stay in step with that story. Go to our website, and we'll have more for you coming up at 9 o'clock as well. cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather. I just got an alert on my phone, actually, so other Manitobans might be getting that as well.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, new tool of communication in the kit for things for police. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, last quick look at traffic.
Portage and Cavalier, lights are completely out, a little bit chaotic, says Sylvie. Eastbound Chief Peg was just before Gateway. Collision there. Median lane is the only thing that's open, backed up quite a bit.
Abby, how much rain?
Steady rain, shifting to snow, 2 to 10 centimeters expected.
All right, well, we'll see what falls, and take care. Stay dry, everyone. Talk to you tomorrow.